Chapter 230. Amidst the countless battle cries, a towering blood-red light burst out from Xiang Yu's back once again. The blood-red war flag was fluttering in the air, unleashing a vast blood-red light that completely enveloped the 80,000 mighty soldiers, and over 20,000 divine undead soldiers behind him. Huge beams of blades and sword energies kept shooting out from the surrounding mountain ridges, hacking and slashing down with tremendous power. But they could only cause large ripples on the blood-red light, and could not hurt even a single soldier behind Xiang Yu. Xiang Yu threw his head back and roared with laughter. "Ingzheng, this formation of yours is quite a marvelous one. My army is 100 miles away from the formation, but they are still forcibly sucked into it. But too bad, I am protected by the banner of Qiyu left behind by the ancient celestial fiend Qiyu. No matter how murderous your blades, spears, swords, halberds are, they can only increase the power of the banner of Qiyu. What can you do to me?" Under the shocked gazes of the crowd, the huge beams of blades and sword energies shot out from the tens of thousands of mountain ridges, which could easily kill an ordinary earth immortal of nascent soul realm, were immediately absorbed by the blood-red war flag. None of the murderous energies could hurt the banner of Qiyu. Instead, they could transform all the murderous energies into the power of the banner of Qiyu. The more powerful the beams of blades and sword energies were, the more ferocious the banner of Qiyu became. As Xiang Yu's life was directly connected with the banner of Qiyu, the ripples of energy emanating from his body became even more unstoppable. When the beams of blades and sword energies shot out from the tens of thousands of mountain ridges and smashed onto the banner of Qiyu, and were all absorbed by it, the murderous energy bursting out from Xiang Yu's body had nearly condensed into a solid form. With a hideous smile on his face, Xiang Yu casually grabbed towards a nearby mountain peak. Immediately, the dozens of elite Qin soldiers guarding on the mountain peak cried out in shock. The weapons in their hands, the armors they wore, everything that carried the murderous aura of the battlefield was no longer under their control, as everything was under Xiang Yu's control with his mind. The dozens of Qin soldiers were sent flying up into the sky, screaming as they were sucked into the blood-red light that shot out from the banner of Qiyu. Xiang Yu casually thrust his spear forward, and the coiling dragon spear shook the Qin soldiers, turning their bones and flesh into blood that sprayed and sprayed all over the sky, before being absorbed by the banner of Qiyu. Xiang Yu casually pushed his left palm forward, and the dozens of blades, spears, swords and halberds in the hands of the Qin soldiers flew out, shooting towards the Qin soldiers guarding on another mountain peak. Shrill howls rang out again. Dozens of Qin soldiers had their bodies pierced by the flying weapons, and the powerful impact knocked them flying several thousand feet away. Suddenly, a sheet of blood-red light swept down from the sky and tightly bound their bodies. In just a blink of an eye, all their blood and flesh essence were absorbed by the blood-red light, and the ferocious aura of the banner of Qiyu grew even stronger. After killing nearly 100 Qin soldiers, Xiang Yu threw his head back and let out a long laugh. Abruptly, he raised the coiling dragon spear up high and roared, "I, Xiang Yu, am invincible." At the same time, several tens of thousands of Xiang clan soldiers cried out at the top of their voices, "We Xiang clan are invincible." The banner of Qiyu had absorbed all the ferocious fighting while emanating from the tens of thousands of Xiang Chu soldiers, transforming them into several thousand beams of blood-red light that shot out and plunged deep into the surrounding mountain ridges. Wuxia exercised the mystic eyes of universe with all his power. Amidst the dim divine light, he saw thousands of blood-red beams piercing through the restrictive spell symbols in the mountain ridges with an unparalleled killing intent. Like a rapidly spreading virus, they quickly devoured and even destroyed the existence of those restrictive spell symbols. Contaminated by the frightening demonic energy of the banner of Qiyu, the restrictive spell symbols in several dozens of nearby mountain ridges were forcibly changed into a blood-red formation that emanated a savage aura, and was densely packed with the intent of killing. Suddenly, several dozens of pitch-black mountain ridges turned into a blinding blood-red color, emitting a dazzling blood-red gleam that shone on the bodies of the Qin soldiers guarding on top of the mountains. Thick white smoke rose from these soldiers' bodies, and they let out painful cries of despair. Amidst the blood-red gleam, these Qin soldiers slowly melted like candles being roasted by a raging flame, and all their blood and flesh were absorbed by the mountain ridges. Shockingly, under the demonic energy of the banner of Chiyu. These mountain ridges had turned into monsters that could devour human flesh and blood. Nourished by the blood and essence of these soldiers, the blood-red gleam that kept darting and darting about in these blood-red mountain ridges were like hungry wolves that had just eaten their fill, quickly spreading out and spreading into the surrounding mountain ridges. One after another, the mountain ridges were tainted by the blood-red gleam. Not only did the murderous aura emanated from the Qin soldiers guarding the formation fail to attack Xiangyu, it had instead become the best nourishment for the banner of Chiyu, nourishing it and making it even more ferocious, as it kept seizing the control of the restrictive spell formations in these mountain ridges. In just a short 15 minutes, over 500 mountain ridges had turned blood-red. A frightening murderous aura towered into the sky, turning this part of the world into a bloody slaughterhouse. Sitting on the back of the dark horse, Xiangyu stared proudly at Giguzi, who was standing on top of the altar in the distance, and said, "What other abilities do you have, old fogey? Show me." With the banner of Chiyu protecting me, no blade, sword, axe or battle-axe can hurt me. No flame or ice can touch me. No evil ghost from the netherworld dares to come near me. And no celestial fiends dares to touch me. So, what abilities do you have to lay out a formation to hurt me, old fogey? Looking at the scene, Wuxia was drooling. The banner of Chiyu was indeed a treasure left behind by an ancient celestial fiend. Its ferocious flame was simply unparalleled. In Wuxia's eyes, a part of the control of the defensive formation was forcibly seized away by the banner of Chiyu, and it was still spreading and spreading. Judging from the current situation, if Giguzi did not make some changes to the formation, sooner or later, Xiangyu would be able to take control of the entire formation. At that point of time, it would not be the mighty army of Xiang clan that would be trapped here, but the mighty army of Daqin led by Ying Zheng. Facing the banner of Chiyu with a towering ferocious flame, Ying Zheng was struck dumb. Almost instinctively, he pulled out the imperial seal. As he was about to use the power of the human emperor contained in the seal to destroy the banner of Chiyu, Li Si and Su Fu stopped him from doing so. Although the imperial seal possessed an incredible power, it had to be powered by Ying Zheng's human emperor blood essence and the aura of virtue. With Ying Zheng's current cultivation base, blood essence and aura, he would need to consume 100 years of his lifespan to power the imperial seal with just one strike. The price was too heavy. On top of that, it was still a question whether the imperial seal of Daqin dynasty could restrain the banner of Chiyu, which was left behind by the ancient celestial fiend Chiyu. Chiyu was killed by the legendary ancient human emperor, the Yellow Emperor Xianyuan. Although Ying Zheng claimed to be the first emperor, his virtues, cultivation base, and divine abilities could not be compared with the Yellow Emperor, one of the ancestors of the human race. It was not hard to imagine that the imperial seal might not be able to restrain the banner of Chiyu, and there was a greater possibility that the imperial seal would be devoured by the banner of Chiyu as well. Right when Ying Zheng and all his ministers were at a loss of what to do, Giguzi, who was standing on top of the altar with his brows knitted in deep thought, suddenly burst into a loud laughter and said, "Don't worry, Your Majesty. There is something that can restrain the banner of Chiyu." How could a mere fiend resist the righteous energy of the heaven and earth? With a casual wave of his hand, Giguzi grabbed the imperial seal from Ying Zheng's hand from 10,000 miles away. At the same time, the sword of Qin Emperor in front of Ying Zheng transformed into a beam of golden light and flew over to Giguzi. Then Giguzi cried out at the top of his voice, "Your Majesty, please write an imperial edict with your own hands, ordering the heaven and earth to subdue this fiend left behind by an ancient fiend." Li Si and Su Fu quickly took out a blank scroll of imperial edict and a brush and ink made of cinnabar. Ying Zheng dripped his blood essence onto the brush and wrote an imperial edict with the quickest speed possible. With a casual wave of his hand, Giguzi grabbed the imperial edict and stamped it heavily with the imperial seal. After that, he threw the imperial edict into the void and cried out, "Heaven and earth, ghosts and deities, all the living beings in all directions, hear the name of the human emperor of Daqin." In the void, an enormous power of law, which was completely different from the natural energy, was vaguely activated. As Giguzi recited the incantation, the dark clouds in the void became thicker and denser. Electric arcs that looked like flood dragons were seen rocking and rocking rapidly in the clouds. Gradually, the densely packed electric arcs converged into an ocean of thunderbolts, dyeing the dark clouds in the void a dazzling golden color. Then, an enormous, awe-inspiring pressure of the heaven and earth came pressing down from the void. Abruptly, the ferocious flame of the banner of Qiyu came to a halt, and the spreading blood-red light stopped abruptly. Giguzi laughed and said, Xiangyu, the hegemon king of Western Chu, with your current cultivation base, do you have the qualification to control the banner of Qiyu? It is nothing more than the ferocious flame of this fiend acting on its own. Without the power of ghosts and deities, there is no way you can control the item of ghosts and deities. Today, this old man will let you understand how a rotten old man, a dead old man, teaches a child like you a lesson. The imperial seal and the sword of Qin Emperor had also transformed into golden beams and shot up into the dense golden clouds in the sky. Giguzi circulated his energy and roared suddenly, all soldiers of Daqin, listen to my order. Kneel down before me, meditate on His Majesty's visage, and chant the human emperor's mantra of subduing devils together with me. On top of the mountain ridge, over 1 million Qin soldiers knelt down and kowtowed to the heaven. Thinking of Ing Zheng's visage together, they began to recite a short incantation together with Giguzi. All the soldiers of Qin army were elite warriors, full of vigor and vigor. When over 1 million soldiers knelt down and kowtowed at the same time, the power of faith generated by them was comparable to that of over 100 million common people. An enormous power of faith was gathering in the void, transforming into a vast and mighty aura of the human emperor by the imperial edict, imperial seal, and sword of Qin Emperor hovering in the sky. The surrounding mountains no longer extracted the natural energy and transformed it into blade beams and sword energies to attack the enemies. Instead, they sent all the natural energies directly into the sky, into the imperial edict, imperial seal, and sword of Qin Emperor. With the support of the enormous natural energies coming from underground, the layers of clouds in the sky grew thicker and thicker, and the power of thunder became stronger and stronger. A tremendous pressure came crashing down from the sky, and the blood-red light that spread out from the banner of Qiyu actually began to roll back gradually. Giguzi's eyes shone with a bright gleam that measured 100 miles long as he cried out sternly, Xiangyu, you are not Qiyu. How can you control the banner of Qiyu? Then he casually pointed his finger out, and the golden clouds in the sky began to descend abruptly. Like a world-destroying thunderstorm, millions of thunderbolts, each measuring about 1 million miles in diameter, came whistling down with deafening rumbles. The thunderstorm formed from thunderbolts had gathered the natural energy from an area of several tens of thousands of miles in circumference, the power of faith from over 1 million Qin soldiers, and the aura of human emperor from Ing Zheng. It transformed into a righteous, mighty energy of righteousness that could destroy everything, and smashed viciously onto the banner of Qiyu. Everything under the heaven and earth had a natural counterbalance to each other. The banner of Qiyu was not afraid of any murderous aura from sabers, spears, swords, and halberds, and it was not afraid of any evil and ferocious energies of fiends, deities, and ghosts. But what the banner of Qiyu feared the most was this righteous, mighty force of the heaven and earth, and the vast and boundless willpower of the human emperor. In those years, the human emperor, Xianyuan, had killed Qiyu. So today the human emperor, Ing Zheng, could also defeat Xiangyu. Countless thunderbolts came crashing down. Xiangyu's body trembled violently, and sticky blood kept bursting out from his 7 apertures. The banner of Qiyu fluttered and writhed in the sky, letting out shrill cries and howls. But under the bombardment of the endless thunderbolts, the ferocious flame of the banner of Qiyu gradually dissipated, and eventually transformed into a faint blood-red light that shot back into Xiangyu's body. The thunderbolts came crashing down, and just as they were about to turn Xiangyu and the several tens of thousands of Xiang clan soldiers behind him into nothingness, a huge black hole suddenly ripped open in the void. Amidst the simple and honest chanting that was filled with the aura of the people living in the mountains and forests, 2 large hands as white as jade reached out from the black hole, thrusting forcefully towards the thunderbolts that came crashing down from the sky. The chanting abruptly turned into a sonorous prayer, as if countless ancient people were praying to the heaven and earth. A tremendous willpower swept across the sky. Countless ghosts and deities materialized in broad daylight, their faces solemn and respectful as they followed the two large hands and shot up into the sky. Millions of ghosts and deities had manifested out of thin air, and the willpower of the common people had shattered the heaven and earth. The thunderclouds that blotted the sky were torn into pieces by the two hands and the countless ghosts and deities. After that, the two hands gently grabbed and released, teleporting Xiangyu and the several tens of thousands of soldiers out of the formation. Gigazi cried out in shock. "Who is the mighty expert? How could you possess such a divine ability?" Soundlessly, the two hands retracted back, and a voice that was as gentle as water and faintly sounded like the knocking of a beautiful jade was heard coming from afar. "It is not my own power. This is the convergence of the souls of all the ancestors of Great Chu, and the power of ghosts and deities under the heaven and earth. I, Chu Ping of Great Chu, dare not covet the credit of heaven." The dark clouds that blotted the sky dispersed, and the several tens of thousands of mountains underneath suddenly crumbled at the same time. Chapter 231. Chu Ping of Great Chu. For a moment, Wuxia could not figure out who this man was. But very soon, all the information about this man's life came flooding out from Lu Xiaobai's memory. If there was no one with the same name, then this Chu Ping should be that man, the third minister of Great Chu, Chu Yuan. Looking at the direction where the shattered hole in the sky was slowly healing, Wuxia took a deep breath. When he thought of the name Chu Yuan, almost instinctively, a faint aroma of bamboo leaves emerged at the tip of his nose. How many dumplings had he eaten since he was young? If he could meet the man who had made countless people eat dumplings for several thousand years in this world, at this moment, it would be a great feeling. Wuxia laughed. Even though Ying Zheng and Xiangyu were glaring at each other with daggers drawn, he still felt it was a great feeling. Not only Chu Yuan, even Ying Zheng and Xiangyu looked so adorable in his eyes right now. Suddenly Wuxia thought of all the people around him, no matter it was Yan Dan, Jingku, Su Qin, or Han Fei, they were all history, a living history. If he could return to Earth, perhaps he could steal a handful of hair from these people and bring it back to Earth, and he would be able to make a fortune. Narrowing his eyes and wearing a faint smile on his face, Wuxia glanced at the people around him with a pleasant mood. This was a great feeling. To be able to be with them. To be able to breathe the air of the same world with them. To be able to grieve and rejoice with them. To be able to face their enemies head-on. This was a great feeling. Even though Ying Zheng had taken him, Wuxia, as an enemy, to be able to take advantage of a man like Ying Zheng was an indescribable feeling. There were thousands of disciples in underhand sect, but only he, Wuxia, was able to steal something from the first emperor of Daqin, Ying Zheng, and succeed in doing so. A great ambition was born in Wuqi's mind. His eyes were darting about furtively, as he regarded all the people around him as his potential targets in the future. Up in the sky, Ying Zheng and Gigazi looked at the shattered hole in the sky, and suddenly breathed out a long sigh at the same time. Gigazi cried out, "Great Chu's Chu Ping?" Third Minister Chu Yuan really lived up to his reputation. Only such a person could use such a stunning and peerless divine ability. "Xiangyu, what is the status of that Chu Ping in Great Chu now?" With a complicated expression, Xiangyu stared at the void. After a long while he finally roared in a low muffled voice, "That pedantic scholar now. He can be considered as the King of Great Chu." Furiously, he swung the coiling dragon spear and said, "If not for Huang Xie and Li Yuan, that pretty boy, holding me back, I would have already ascended to the throne of Great Chu. Bastards, they were the ones who kept pestering me. I had no choice but to part ways. None of us could become the king of the Great Chu, and that pedantic scholar could only ascend the throne." After cursing for a while, Xiangyu suddenly laughed and said, "But it seems that he has done a good job these 2,000 years. Narrowing his eyes, Xiangyu gave Ying Zheng and Gigazi a glance, then laughed and said, "I dare not boast about other things, but if we are talking about the vastness of our territory and the number of our people, during my journey to the north, I passed by Great Wei and Great Zhao, and even sneaked into their capital and lived there for a few years. That's how I obtained some information about them. The territory of Great Chu is 30 times larger than theirs, and the population of Great Chu is 100 times larger than theirs." Sticking out his chest proudly, Xiang Yu turned to Ing Zheng, whose face had turned pale, and said, Great Wei and Great Zhao have been slaughtering barbarians and expanding their territory. As for Great Chu, because that pedantic scholar Chu Ping eloped with their holy daughter, he became the queen of Great Chu. Therefore Great Chu absorbed the barbarians and formed a kingdom of its own. Wherever we went, the barbarians would surrender at the first sight of us. The overall strength of Great Chu is far greater than any other kingdoms. Xiang Yu's loud laughter towered into the sky, and all the mighty soldiers behind him were laughing complacently as well. Amidst the loud laughter of these mighty soldiers, one after another, they lifted up the masks on their helmets and revealed their faces. Among the 80,000 mighty soldiers of Great Chu, over 60,000 of them had colorful tattoos on their faces, and their cheeks were densely covered with the unique patterns of venomous bugs, wild beasts, skeletons, ghosts, and other barbarians. Ing Zheng opened his mouth, but could not say a word for a long while. Yan Dan's body swayed, and he nearly coughed out a mouthful of blood. Seducing the barbarian holy daughter and eloping with her, holding her hostage to order the barbarians. This method is indeed effective. But too bad, Great Yin was founded by slaughtering barbarians. Among the barbarian holy daughters, 17 of them were killed by Dan. What a Great Chu! What a Chu Ping! What a Xiang Yu! He is obviously a talented overlord, but he is willing to submit to Chu Ping. This Great Chu! Great Chu! Yan Dan took a deep breath and bit his lips tightly. Even Wuxia felt his head spinning. The territory of Great Chu was 30 times larger than that of Great Wei and Great Zhao, and its population was at least 100 times larger than that of the two dynasties. If that was the case, the national strength of Great Chu was at least 10 times greater than that of Great Yan, or even Daqin, or even more. Obviously, the speed of development of Great Chu, who had always been in a friendly relationship with barbarians, and had even fused with their bloodline, was far beyond that of Great Yan, who had been fighting a bloody war with barbarians year after year, and had even issued a barbarian hunting order to purchase the heads of barbarians. What a great minister Chu Yuan! Wuqi breathed out a heavy sigh of relief. Suddenly, both Ing Zheng and Gigazi turned to look at Wuqi at the same time. A strange gleam flickered in Ing Zheng's eyes as he cried out sternly, Yan Dan, since you are here, why are you still peeping at us? Are you waiting for me and Xiang Yu to fight to the death, so that you can take advantage of the situation? Then he waved his hand casually, unleashing a powerful airflow that came sweeping over and parted a nearly 1,000 miles long cloudy path. The 10 miles wide cloudy path was completely empty, and not even a single cloud or mist could be seen, revealing the blue sky. It went from the front of Wuqi and his company all the way to the front of Ing Zheng's chariot. Yan Dan gave a loud and sonorous laugh, then stepped on a cloud and flew along the cloudy path. Elder brother Zheng, long time no see, he said with a loud voice. When Yan Dan left the chariot, it was natural that Wuqi and the other ministers had to follow closely behind him. 5 great demon kings brought a large group of their disciples and grand disciples, riding on demon clouds and gales, and following closely behind. Wanying Dragon King was taken aback. He glanced to the left and right, then helplessly brought his son, 3 great demon subordinates, and nearly 100 nascent soul demon warriors, slowly treading on the water, and following behind the group of cultivators. When he heard Yan Dan addressing him as elder brother Zheng, Ing Zheng's face twitched abruptly, and a complicated expression emerged on his face. But very soon, his expression turned extremely cold, and the cold gleam in his eyes became completely emotionless. He stared at Yan Dan coldly and said in an indifferent tone, It has been over 2,000 years since I last heard someone addressing me as elder brother Zheng. Dan, if you, Great Yan, are willing to submit to me and merge with Daqin, I'll confer you the title of king. Yan Dan laughed and said, Elder brother Zheng, Ing Zheng, your majesty, if you Daqin are willing to submit to Great Yan, I can forego the enmity of those years, and allow you to be the king of Siding in Great Yan, a prosperous and peaceful land. Pointing his finger at Ing Zheng, Yan Dan smiled and said, I'm more generous than your majesty. How can a mere title of king compare to the king of Siding in Great Yan? Ing Zheng shook his head, stared at Yan Dan, breathed out a long sigh and said, Of course it can. Great Yan is not as good as Daqin, so any title of king in Daqin can be compared to the king of Siding in Great Yan. Yin Dan, it seems like you suddenly have the confidence to face me head-on? But, with those 3 inferior assassins around you, what makes you think you have the qualification to fight me? Upon hearing Ying Zheng's words, Yin Dan could not help but burst into a loud laughter. Stepping on clouds, Mod and Sun Kuang flew out from behind Yin Dan, cupped their fists and bowed slightly to Ying Zheng. Mod from Mo sect offers greeting your majesty, said Mod coolly. Confucian sect Sun Kuang, said Sun Kuang coolly. Ying Zheng's face fell instantly. He gave Mod a quick glance, then fixed his eyes on Sun Kuang. Gigazi's face flickered as well. He flew forward, cupped his fist and bowed to Sun Kuang, and said, Brother Sun Qing, do you still remember my old friend, Wang Su of Gigazi? After that he cupped his fist and bowed to Mod. Greetings, Grandmaster of Mo sect Gigazi. Mod and Sun Kuang returned Gigazi's greeting at the same time. The 3 of them exchanged a glance and smiled, then flew a few miles away on clouds, chatting and laughing with each other. The 3 of them talked and laughed in a carefree manner, and there was no air of hostility between them. Wuxia could not help but sigh with emotion in his mind. This was the true spirit of a grandmaster. With these 3 men standing right in front of them, it was impossible for them to fight each other. Ying Zheng twitched his mouth in anger. Suddenly he turned to look at Han Fei, who stood next to Yin Dan, and said, Mr. Han Fei, the post of Prime Minister of Daqin is vacant. Can you accept it? Han Fei shook his head at Ying Zheng and did not say a word, just like a wooden man. Yin Dan roared with laughter as well. He turned to Li Si and Su Fu, who stood next to Ying Zheng, and shouted, Mr. Li Si, Mr. Su Fu, if both of you are willing to come to Great Yin Dynasty, you can choose any position like Prime Minister or Imperial Advisor of Great Yin Dynasty. Apart from the throne of the Emperor of Great Yin, you can have whatever title of nobility. How much land do you want? Just tell me, and I'm willing to treat you with the courtesy of a master. Xiang Yu, who felt that he was being ignored, roared furiously. You are both heroes of the generation, so why are you putting on such a hypocritical and pedantic look? Be it Ying Zheng or Yin Dan, who wants to have a fair and square fight with me? Han Fei Li Si Su Fu. Once I twist off the head of your masters, you will naturally come and serve me obediently. Han Fei Li Si and Su Fu turned to look at Xiang Yu at the same time and cried out angrily. What a stinky fart. Han Fei casually pointed his finger out, and the natural energies around Xiang Yu shattered and vanished into nothingness. Then, Li Si waved his hand, and a violent thunderbolt descended from the sky, smashing viciously towards Xiang Yu's head. On the other side, Su Fu recited a spell with an insidious voice. Suddenly, 3 huge and ferocious ghosts emerged from the void, clawing and pulling at Xiang Yu. Xiang Yu was infuriated. He raised his hand and punched, shattering the joint attack of 3 men. Then he let out a loud roar, raised his spear and prepared to charge into the enemy formation with 80,000 mighty soldiers. Even if he were to face both Ying Zheng and Yin Dan at the same time, he was confident that he could defeat them with his army. This was Xiang Yu, the pride of the hegemon king of Western Chu. Amidst the chaotic atmosphere, a long and evil laugh was suddenly heard coming from afar. With so many heroes gathered here, this is indeed a gathering of heroes. How could Lao Ai not join in the fun? Ha ha ha. All of you are dragons among men. Together with Lao Ai, today's gathering can be named as the Gathering of 4 Dragons. Isn't that a wonderful event? A melodious tune was heard coming from afar, as Lao Ai, clad in a bright red robe, stepped on a cloud, and escorted by several hundred enchanting beauties and nearly 1,000 burly men, was flying at top speed. Lao Ai's long hair hung loosely over his shoulders, and a strange gleam could be seen flashing in his eyes as he fixed his gaze on Ying Zheng. Suddenly 3 loud shouts came from Chi-Chi. Get the hell out of here, Lao Ai! Gathering of 4 dragons? You are not qualified. Ying Zheng, Xiang Yu, and Yin Dan roared furiously at Lao Ai at the same time. He Mo's face suddenly turned extremely unsightly, while Wuxia narrowed his eyes and looked at He Mo with a broad smile. Chapter 232. He Mo, who came riding on a cloud complacently, had his face instantly changed. He stopped abruptly and glared at Yin Dan and the other 2 with a venomous look. Yen Dan gave Lao Ai a sidelong glance and said coldly, Lao Ai, although I am not a talented man, I am still the monarch of a kingdom. You have been hiding in Great Yen for over 2,000 years, using Great Yen to hide yourself and carry out those treacherous schemes. I despise you. You lost to me in the bet in the drill ground, and you are defeated by me. I despise you even more, since you could not win the bet, and failed to seize my kingdom. What makes you think you are qualified to stand side by side with me? Yingzheng stared at Lao Ai coldly and said, Lao Ai, you are just a eunuch in my palace. Why don't you kneel down and pay your respect to me? It has been over 2,000 years since we last met. And have you forgotten that I am the monarch, your master? You are a eunuch, a dog under my feet. What makes a dog qualified to stand side by side with me? Are you crazy, or are you stupid? Lao Ai's face turned red, then pale, then red again. Suddenly, he coughed out a mouthful of blood. He pointed a trembling finger at Yen Dan and Yingzheng, his lips twitching as if he wanted to say something. But before he could say anything, Xiang Yu, who was rubbing his coiling dragon spear, roared impatiently, Stop pretending to be a decent man. Yingzheng, the first emperor of Daqin, a mighty monarch. Yen Dan, the crown prince of Yen Kingdom, a retainer of Great Yen who also attempted to assassinate a dragon. Now he is the monarch of Great Yen, a hero of his generation. I have run amok under the heaven, killed all the members of Daqin imperial clan, and boasted that I am also a peerless overlord. It is only natural that the three of us call ourselves the Three Dragons Union. Laughing coldly and arrogantly, Xiang Yu gave Lao Ai's crotch a mocking glance, then raised his head and roared. You Lao Ai, I have heard of your name as well. You are a fake eunuch who relies on your bird. Without your bird, you are nothing but a lowly man. What makes you qualified to be called the Four Dragons with us? Bah, look at that thing in your crotch. Is it even a dragon? Yen Dan's words were considered polite, and Yingzheng's words were polite. However, Xiang Yu's words were like a bunch of scolding with spears and sticks. Lao Ai, who had just coughed out a mouthful of blood because of Yingzheng, trembled and coughed out another mouthful of blood on the spot. Trembling, he gave Yen Dan a look. Yen Dan was flanked by two mighty experts, Sun Kuang and Mod. Then he turned to look at Yingzheng in exasperation. Yingzheng was flanked by Gi Gazi, as well as a group of valiant civil and military officials from Daqin dynasty. None of them were easy to deal with, especially when Lao Ai was friends with Li Si and Su Fu. He knew that these people were cruel and merciless, and had countless trump cards. Therefore, he did not have the courage to provoke them. Panicked and exasperated, Lao Ai narrowed his eyes and stared at Xiang Yu. Xiang Yu, the hegemon king of Western Chu? You call yourself an overlord, but who do you think you are? I, Lao Ai, swear here and now that I will wipe out your entire clan and rape all your women and children. Lao Ai's long hair stood up, and a pink mist towered up into the sky around him, while a boundless evil aura surged and rushed in all directions. Suddenly, the several hundred enchanting beauties, and nearly 1,000 burly men around him let out flirtatious moans at the same time. An enchanting aura spread out in all directions, while a powerful evil force rushed toward the souls and nascent divinities of the people around them. In just a blink of an eye, the clothes worn by those beauties and burly men had vanished without a trace. In the presence of so many people, they began to have sex in groups of 3 to 5. A tremor ran through Wuxia's body. Suddenly, a wisp of evil flame rushed up from his lower abdomen. The Jin Dan in his dantian trembled abruptly, and the evil flame emerged from the core of the Jin Dan. If it were an ordinary Jin Dan, the Jin Dan would have been burned to ashes, and all their cultivation base would have gone down the drain. Fortunately, Wuxia's Jin Dan was protected by 5 acquired spirit pearls, and the enormous acquired energies of 5 elements had firmly stabilized the foundation of his Jin Dan. No matter how the evil flame wreaked havoc, it could not do anything to Wuxia. Instead, it helped him to temper his Jin Dan and his mind. While cheering, the 7 holy deities and devils rushed into the Jin Dan from Wuxia's spiritual ocean, and began to devour the evil flame, which contained a boundless lustful aura. The movements of the men and women around Lao Ai became bigger and bigger, as the fiend technique had reached its climax. The lustful flame in Wuxia's Jin Dan grew stronger and stronger, but it only provided nourishment for Wuqi's 7 holy deities and devils, and did not damage his foundation at all. Wuqi narrowed his eyes with a straight face, enjoying the performance of the men and women around Lao Ai. It was as if he was back on Earth, watching those adult programs that were not suitable for children. Suddenly, 2 big hands pressed on his back, and 2 streams of bone-piercing cold energy were injected into Wuqi's dantian, rushing straight towards the evil flame in it. Wuqi turned his head in surprise, and saw that it was Catfish Flood Dragon and Lord Xiansheng, who were exercising their cultivation base to resist the attack of the fiend technique, while helping Wuqi dispel the evil force. As Lord Xiansheng was a mighty expert who was about to form his nascent divinity, Lao Ai's fiend technique did not have much effect on him. However, Catfish Flood Dragon's cultivation base was far weaker than Lord Xiansheng, and her Flood Dragon bloodline was not as strong as his. Her dragon energies were impure, and she was greatly affected by such a fiend technique. Facing Lao Ai's despicable fiend technique, Catfish Flood Dragon was under much greater pressure. Her body was shivering, and when she saw that she was about to lose control of her mind, she still helped Wuqi to suppress the evil flame. It showed that she had a pretty good temperament. As the saying went, a drop of water should be repaid with a gushing spring. She must be this kind of demon, right? Although she was a little silly, Wuqi did not mind having more of such demons. He took a deep breath, and the Jin Dan in Wuqi's dantian began to move. The 5 acquired spirit pearls began to spin rapidly, and a great amount of acquired energies of 5 elements rushed into Lord Xiansheng and Catfish Flood Dragon's bodies through his body, flowing quickly through them to help them refine the impurities in their fleshly bodies, and improve the purity of their Flood Dragon bloodline. As Wuqi had been cultivating the dragon transformation script for some time, he had a very deep understanding of its essence. With his help, both Catfish Flood Dragon and Lord Xiansheng felt their bodies were boiling hot, as if their blood essence was burning, and a great amount of impurities were quickly dispelled. Wuqi turned his head and smiled at Lord Xiansheng and Catfish Flood Dragon, then nodded and said, "Thank you, both of you. Wuqi has an extraordinary treasure with me, so I can protect myself. I really appreciate your kindness." The circulation of the energies in Wuqi's body increased, and more acquired energies of 5 elements kept rushing into Catfish Flood Dragon and Lord Xiansheng's bodies. Lord Xiansheng smiled, narrowed his eyes, and increased the amount of dragon energies he sent into Wuqi's body. Almost instinctively, Catfish Flood Dragon sent even more dragon energies into Wuqi's body, and after they were refined by the 5 element spirit pearls, they returned to their bodies. The blood essence and energy in their bodies were at least 100 times stronger than Wuqi's. Wuqi was helping them purify their energy essence, and at the same time, their dragon energy essence was also improving the strength of his body. It was indeed a win-win situation, where he returned the favor. While Wuqi and his companions were sharing the benefits, Lao Ai's shameless evil technique had annoyed Xiangyu. As a hot-tempered man, Xiangyu could not tolerate even a grain of sand in his eyes. Therefore, when he saw Lao Ai shamelessly asking his disciples to put on a grand show in front of so many people, a great rage immediately rushed to his head. On top of that, there were several tens of thousands of soldiers with the cultivation base of Jin Dan among Great Chu's mighty army. Seeing that their bodies were on the verge of collapsing, Xiangyu let out a furious roar. Immediately, the 18 giant undead warriors standing behind him let out thunderous roars, formed a formation and charged towards Lao Ai. A smile emerged on Ing Zheng and Yin Dan's faces at the same time. At the same time, both men ordered their subordinates to retreat, as they wanted to witness the overall strength of Xiangyu and Lao Ai. In the future, both Xiangyu and Lao Ai would be their archenemies, and it would only benefit them if they could have a fight with them first. There were 18 gigantic zombies, each towering 10,000 feet tall. No one knew where Xiangyu found such gigantic corpses, and refined them into powerful zombies. However, these 18 human-shaped undead warriors were definitely not the skeletons of a human being. Not only did they stand 10,000 feet tall, their skin was densely covered with dark scales, and there were more or less sharp horns growing on their heads. Their facial bones looked more like those of wild beasts. A few of them even had long tails that looked like the tails of cows trailing behind their buttocks. These non-human features indicated that they might be the skeletons of some ancient clan, and had nothing to do with human beings. The 18 giant undead warriors roared and charged towards Lao Ai, surrounding him and over 1,000 disciples. After that, they raised their arms and smashed them down viciously towards Lao Ai's head. Not long ago, these undead warriors were spitting out a crimson flame from their mouths, turning all the condemned prisoners in one of Qin's cities into nothingness. But now, their fists were covered in a thick layer of dark flame. 36 giant fists plunged down from the sky like shooting stars, smashing down with deep, muffled whistling noises. Lao Ai was indeed a peerless evil man. He waved his arms and let out a long, loud laugh that shook the sky. Suddenly, a large sheet of pink mist sprayed out from the bodies of over 1,000 disciples who were having sex crazily around him. In just a blink of an eye, all of them were sucked into Lao Ai's body. After being replenished by an enormous amount of lustful aura, Lao Ai's body had expanded to the height of 30 feet. His clothes exploded abruptly, revealing his extremely muscular body. Blood surged from his lower body, making him look like a spear piercing into the sky. His clone was emitting a faint golden gleam, while the natural energies around him were being oppressed by a tremendous force, producing crackling noises. With his clone as the core, a very vast fiend energy kept circling around him, making his blood vessels expand and his muscles swell, making him look like an ancient celestial fiend. Facing the giant fists of 18 giant undead warriors, Lao Ai did not show any sign of weakness. He raised both fists up and met them head-on. Great Sun technique. Break. He roared at the top of his voice. All of a sudden, 10 streams of pinkish energy burst out from Lao Ai's 10 fingers. The pinkish energy burst into flames abruptly, transforming into a huge ball of light that looked as dazzling as a small sun, emanating a boundless evil aura. Vaguely, one could see countless enchanting naked girls singing and dancing inside the ball of light. Accompanied by a beautiful melody, the ball of light was thrown out from Lao Ai's hand, smashing forcefully into the heavy fists of the giant undead warriors. A sweet moan of a girl rang out. Suddenly, the void was filled with a strong, enchanting pink light, and a magnificent garden emerged in midair. Countless exotic flowers and plants could be seen growing in the garden, where hundreds of millions of naked beauties and handsome men were having sex to their heart's content. 18 giant undead warriors were trapped in the garden, running around aimlessly like headless flies. If an ordinary cultivator were trapped in this garden, it would not take long for his soul to be controlled by the lustful aura. His spirit, energy, and soul would be burned into ashes by the Yin flame, and all his cultivation base would become Lao Ai's tonic. But unfortunately, it was 18 undead warriors who were trapped here, 18 undead warriors who had completely lost their living instincts. These giant undead warriors were only stunned for a brief moment in the illusion of the garden, before they roared furiously, waving their fists wildly in all directions, while spewing out crimson flames from their mouths. Lao Ai's body trembled. He kept performing incantation gestures with both hands, barely maintaining the illusion. While maintaining the illusion with all his cultivation base, he roared fiercely, "Xiangyu, do all these monsters possess the strength of early-stage nascent divinity realm?" Xiangyu did not answer. Nobody knew when he had arrived in front of Lao Ai on his mount, thrusting his spear right in front of his face. 18 giant undead warriors with the overall strength equivalent to early-stage nascent divinity realm had pinned down all of Lao Ai's energy, making him incapable of resisting Xiangyu's sudden thrust. Amidst a blinding black gleam, the spear flashed across the air, and a jet of blood shot up into the sky. Lao Ai let out a miserable howl of extreme hatred. Chapter 233. Before Xiangyu's words could fade away, a loud laughter suddenly rang out from all directions. It was especially true for Su Meier, who was laughing so hard that her body was convulsing. She was lying on the shoulders of 2 fox demon disciples, shaking and nearly falling down from the clouds. Pointing her finger at Xiangyu, she said, Xiangyu looks like a hero, but I never knew that he would be attracted by this big guy just like us girls. He Xiangyu, the hegemon king of Western Chu. How did you fall in love with this treasure? Lao Ai flew into a rage, pointing his finger at the direction where Xiangyu disappeared and cursed. Then he pulled out a small golden bell and lightly knocked on it. The ringing of the bell was melodious and pleasant to the ear, bringing with it a faintly discernible lingering feeling. The male and female disciples who were exercising a fiend technique sprung up into the sky. In just a blink of an eye, they had dressed up and stood behind Lao Ai with expressionless faces. Looking at the direction where Xiangyu fled, Yan Dan shook his head and said, "Strong, very strong. But what worried me the most was that this Xiangyu is not an easy man to deal with. 80,000 Jin Dan soldiers are nothing, but the one leading them is a hegemon king. Yan Dan is afraid that this hegemon king will not be easy to deal with." Hiss! The few fox demon girls giggled and turned to look at Lao Ai with their watery eyes. Both of them exchanged a glance, then burst out laughing at the same time. But there was no warmth or joy in their laughter anymore. With their faces darkened, the Xiangyu soldiers turned their chariots around and rode away in a hurry, following behind Xiangyu. Not only did Xiangyu humiliate himself with the spear, he had also humiliated all the Xiangyu soldiers, making them wish they could disappear from the world at this very moment. Loud rumbling noises echoed out as the 18 giant undead warriors broke free from Lao Ai's illusion. It was as if they had realized that their master had done something shameful. Holding their heads with both hands, they followed closely behind the Xiangyu soldiers and fled in a flurry. "Oh," Su Meier answered with a bright gleam in her eyes as she turned to look at Lao Ai, who was waving his arms and cursing. Lowering her voice, she giggled and said, "My boys, 2 of you will go tonight and have a good test of this Prince of Chongqing's abilities. Hee, I never expected that there would be someone like me in Great Yan Dynasty. A good man who cultivates the technique of combining yin and yang. If he's capable, then let him come and find the elder ancestor. If he's just a spearhead that looks like silver, then I'll suck his marrow dry and let him know that not every spear can be taken out to show off." Amidst the surrounding mountain ridges, several 100,000 practitioners and millions of elite soldiers of Qin army flew out from their hiding places, forming into a great formation, escorting Yin Zheng and his company as they retreated westward at top speed. Behind them a large cloud was also used. Countless Yen soldiers flew over on their flying Dharma artifacts, protecting Yan Dan, who was severely injured and vomiting blood, as they retreated. Gue Guzi, Sun Kuang, and MOD were all martial grandmasters. Even though Yin Zheng and Yan Dan were emperors, they did not dare to do so. The cultivation of masters like Han Fei, Li Si, and Su Fu, the valiant spirit of Jing Ku, Fan Yuqi, Bai Qi, Wang Jian, and the other great generals, the ferocity and ruthlessness of all the demon kings. On top of that, with Wu Qi's eyesight and knowledge as a freak, when they saw the result of Xiangyu's spear thrust, they still gasped at the same time, and subconsciously twisted their waists, putting their legs together unnaturally. Sensing the strange gazes from the surroundings, Xiangyu suddenly had an urge to cry, but no tears came out. Hastily he turned his head and roared. I was just," staring blankly at Lao Ai's split body. He breathed out a long sigh and said, "What a tough guy. Swan and I, you demon, you really live up to your reputation." Yan Dan stopped laughing, shook his head and said indifferently, "Although Lao Ai is now Great Yan's Prince of Chongqing, and if His Majesty Yingzheng wants to kill him, as long as His Majesty has the means to do so, you can just kill him. But Lao Ai's evil cultivation base is amazing, and he is a cunning and patient man. He is not an easy opponent. If a few of the famous ministers and generals serving His Majesty were killed by him, I will have to hold a feast to celebrate." Another gasp was heard coming from the surroundings. In an unnatural manner, Wu Qi clamped his thighs tightly. He turned to look at Xiangyu with vigilance. He did not expect this hegemon king of Western Chu to have such a nasty hobby. He had actually chosen Lao Ai's vital part and thrust his spear right into it. It looked like he would have to be extra careful when going against Xiangyu in the future. Apart from the heavenly fox Su Meier and her female demons, all the other male creatures clamped their thighs tightly together. The sound of water splashing could be heard. Lao Ai, shivering from head to toe, lowered his head and looked at his lower body that was spraying blood. Suddenly he threw his head back and roared crazily into the sky. "Xiangyu, you little punk! You are so shameless. You are such a shameless and unruly man. In a battle on the battlefield, do you purposely focus on your lower body? Lao Ai swears that I will kill you. I will kill you. I will tear your scales into pieces and kill you. After a brief moment of pondering, Yingzheng nodded slowly and said, the great Chu represented by Xiang Yu has appeared. I'm afraid our old friends will be dragged into this chaotic situation in the near future. We have endured for over 2,000 years, and finally, we have the strength to step out of our own territory, and finally, we have the strength to conquer the world. This world will no longer be lonely. But today, I've enjoyed myself to the fullest. Let's fight another day. I wonder if Yan Dan has the mood to fight me on the battlefield? Wu Qi was standing not too far away from Su Mei. Therefore, he heard her order loud and clear. He could not help but shake his head inwardly. It looked like Lao Ai was about to find himself a good backer. In the future, even if Yan Dan wanted to defeat Lao Ai, it would not be easy. Wu Qi had no doubt that Lao Ai could pass Su Mei's test. After all, this evil man had been cultivating the Great Sun technique for over 2,000 years, and he had spent all his effort on that precious fish. A few fox girls would not be able to defeat this evil man. Yingzheng pondered for a brief moment, then nodded slowly with a smile and said, all right. Today is different from the past. You and I both have great divine abilities, so how could we not fight alone in this decisive battle on the battlefield? As an emperor, he should naturally be invincible on the battlefield. Yan Dan and Yingzheng laughed at each other. Yan Dan did not explain to them that he was cultivating the reincarnation technique of 9 deaths and 9 lives. Instead, he pulled out a silver-white sword and thrust it toward Yingzheng's face. Shadows of 8 flood dragons and 1 serpent emerged from behind Yingzheng's back, while a large sheet of dark mist spread in all directions. Yingzheng flipped his palm, and the sword of Qin Emperor appeared in his palm. He stared at Yan Dan and said coolly, the 9 dragons cauldron grand magic I'm cultivating is a technique that gathers the blood essence of dragons. When I kill a serpent, I gain the strength of a serpent. When I kill a flood dragon, I gain the strength of a flood dragon. When I kill a dragon, I gain the strength of a dragon. I'm the son of heaven, and this cultivation technique gathers the energy of a divine dragon to rule the world. It is the merit that should be given to the human emperor. A strange gleam flickered in Wu Qi's eyes as he gave a glance somewhere to the south. Behind a dense cloud, Xiang Yu was seen hiding in the cloud with a group of his subordinates, looking at the direction of the battle. Yingzheng let out a long and sonorous laugh, while the sword of Qin Emperor shot out and greeted Yan Dan head-on. All of a sudden, the laughter of both men stopped abruptly. A strong light flashed, and Wu Qi exercised the mystic eyes of universe with all his might. He could barely see that in that very moment, both Yan Dan and Yingzheng had exchanged 81 sword strikes at the same time, driving 81 magical techniques and divine abilities, and had smashed onto each other. Both of them were equipped with excellent defensive magical treasures, so when these soft and feeble sword strikes and magical techniques landed on each other, they did not cause any harm. Although both of them had unleashed such a mighty attack, it was just a feint, and they did not use any ultimate attack. A buzzing noise was heard coming out from Yingzheng's body, as 9 three-legged cauldrons, each standing 90 feet tall and looking like illusions, rushed out from behind his back. 8 flood dragons and 1 serpent were hovering right above the 9 cauldrons. A vast and mighty aura of an emperor came rushing at their faces, bringing with it a spiritual pressure that was unique to flood dragons. Wu Qi and all the other men could not keep their balance, and were forced to retreat in all directions. It was especially true for Wanying Dragon King and the other aquatic clan members, as their faces turned extremely unsightly. Taking a deep breath, Wu Qi murmured to himself, so the next battle will be the final one? Who was the one who could not hold back and struck first? Who was the one who was set up by someone else? Who will be the final winner? Sighing, Wu Qi murmured to himself, I don't care so much, as long as I can survive. However, among all the people present, there were Gi Guzi, Mod, and Sun Kuang, who were all grandmasters. Lao Ai would be too ashamed to show his face to anyone. Bringing all his disciples, he sped away on the cloud, rushing back to Little Meng City and hiding in his field headquarters, never coming out to meet anyone again. Yingzheng pointed at the direction where Xiangyu had fled and said coolly, 80,000 mighty Jindan soldiers, 80,000 demon beasts with demon cores, several tens of thousands of divine undead soldiers, 18 undead celestial fiends who are equivalent to early-stage nascent divinity cultivators, and the enigmatic Chu Ping, Huang Xie, Li Yuan, and a group of ministers and generals of Great Chu. On top of that, they have a territory and people 100 times larger than us. Yandan, what do you think about the overall strength of Great Chu? Xiangyu nodded hastily and said, You are right, my little friend. I was attracted by this thing. Lao Ai pulled out some spare clothes and put them on neatly. He gave Yandan and Yingzheng a cold glance, then spun and left without saying a word. Today he boasted that he was one of the 4 dragons, and wanted to stand on equal footing with Yingzheng, Yandan, and Xiangyu. But in the end, he was crushed by a single spear thrust from Xiangyu, which made him too ashamed to show his face in front of anyone. It would be fine if all the people present were ordinary people, but Lao Ai had a thick skin, as he could still stay here as if nothing had happened. Wu Qi said in a strange voice, You can only blame this thing for attracting you too much, and that's why you purposely aimed the spear at it. After laughing for a while, Yingzheng suddenly stopped laughing and said coolly, Lao Ai is a vile man, and I should kill him. Ayaya. Only then did Xiangyu realize that he had been tricked by Wu Qi's words, and had said something that was extremely misleading. He flew into a rage and roared, Nonsense! I just found this fellow an eyesore, so I just casually shot him with my spear. How could I? Ayaya. You are driving me mad. His face was flushed, and he raised his sleeve to cover his face. Then he pulled out the coiling dragon spear, cursing all the ancestors of Wu Qi along the way as he rode back to the formation of Great Chu's mighty army. Yandan laughed. Suddenly, a grayish-white bright beam shot up into the sky from behind his back, as the disk of Great Dao transmigration slowly rose up into the sky with a deep, muffled sound of spinning. Yandan stared at Yingzheng, who was a few miles away, and said with a smile, Are you interested? Why don't your Majesty Yingzheng have a match with me today? Amidst Tao's almost crazed howl, a thick pink mist covered his body. Amidst the jarring sound of metal rubbing against metal, Lao Ai's clone, which was ripped apart by the coiling dragon's spear, began to wriggle and heal itself. Very soon, it returned to its original state, and was still emitting a faint golden gleam. Yingzheng nodded his head and said with a smile, Same to you, same to you. If I can behead Yandan, Jingku Gao Jianli and all the others, I'll definitely grant amnesty to the entire world, and let all the people celebrate this grand event with me. The spear thrust from Xiangyu was too vicious, too sinister, and too harsh. He thrust the spear right at Lao Ai's crotch. It was not aimed at any other part of his body, but it went right into his urinal area, and went over 1 foot deep. All Lao Ai's skill was focused on his clone. When Xiangyu thrust the coiling dragon spear into the clone, it actually produced a jarring sound of metal rubbing against metal, and produced a large amount of sparks. It was no longer a body of flesh and blood, but a mineral crystal similar to a diamond. Even with Xiangyu's extraordinary strength and the strength of the upper-grade magical treasure, the coiling dragon spear, it took him a full 2 breaths of time before he managed to pierce through the vital part of Lao Ai's clone. Both Yandan and Yingzheng burst out laughing at Lao Ai, who had overestimated his own strength and wanted to be on par with them. Chapter 234. The moon was bright, and the stars were sparse. Wu Qi was sitting in the quiet room, and he could hear the sound of grass growing and flowers blooming in the surroundings. Winter had passed, and spring had arrived. The snow and ice on the land of Great Yen had thawed, and all living things were eagerly releasing the life force that had been accumulated for a few months. Flowers, grasses, and trees were busy sprouting. In this spring night that was full of life force, Wu Qi could even hear the moaning of she-bears coming from the courtyard next door. Xiongqing brothers and a group of demon bears had caught a batch of she-bears who had just woken up from hibernation. They were excitedly carrying out the great plan of breeding the next generation. This was also the request of Xiong Wanling for all his offsprings. These days, all the demon bears in Black Wind Valley were working hard day and night, striving to expand the scale of the bear dens in Black Wind Valley. Are these the 153 she-bears that were harmed by the brothers? Wuxia took a deep breath, then slowly exhaled a mixed aura that was intertwined with 5 colors. The energies in his body were further purified, and a tiny thread of innate nectar energy, about the size of a dust particle, was condensed from his internal organs, then slowly fused into the false cores in his arms. This was the total result of Wuxia's hard work after a night of cultivation. After forming the innate Jin Dan of 5 elements, the cultivation of Scroll of Stealing had slowed down abruptly. The realm of Jin Dan was still the period of foundation building for Scroll of Stealing. Furthermore, the foundation he needed to lay in this stage was thousands of times harsher than that of Xiantian realm. Sensing the 10 false cores in his arms that had become slightly brighter, Wuxia pushed open the door of the quiet room, and took a deep breath of the air that was mixed with the fragrance of plants and the stench of bears. In the courtyard next door, the she-bears were still howling. It was hard to tell if they were happy or in pain, but their howls could disturb one's mind, making Wuxia have no idea what to say. Wuxia breathed out a long sigh as he gave the courtyard next door a quick glance with his divine will and said, 153 pristine she-bears have been ruined by you just like that. Stepping on the watery cloud, Wuxia flew up into the sky and opened the mystic eyes of universe to look around. Vaguely, a divine light shot out from his pupils. Within a radius of 100 miles, even the movement of a single grain of sand could not be hidden from Wuxia's eyes. Within 1,000 miles, Wuxia could clearly see the silhouette of a night bird flying across the night sky in a panic. His field of vision was as far as 1,500 miles away. At this distance, he could see figures hiding in the deepest shadows. On the wall of Meng Fortress that had been repaired, a large group of Yen soldiers were patrolling back and forth. High up in the sky patrolling eagle guards flashed by with faint blue shadows. At a depth of 1,000 feet underground, great Yen cultivators were patrolling along the direction of the flow of the underground energy veins, keeping an eye out for any enemies that might show up at any time. Apart from the tiny light coming from the arrow towers, there was not a single light in the vast Meng Fortress. Wrong, there is still one place lit up. It was the window of the quiet chamber, where Lu Chengfeng was cultivating not far away. After forming his Jin Dan, Lu Chengfeng's interest in the Tao of formation had increased by a few times. Now he was studying the script of heaven patching formation day and night, and his enthusiasm was much greater than Xiongqing and Xiongqing, who were torturing the she-bears every single day. Wuxia looked around, clasped his hands behind his back, and stared lazily at the bright moon in the sky. Ingzheng Xiangyu, what are you waiting for? Why haven't you shown up yet? For months have passed since that battle. Are you all waiting for others to make the first move? Ingzheng has many advisors around him, so he can stay calm and wait for the best opportunity to strike. But Xiangyu, what are you waiting for? What are you trying to achieve by bringing an army to the north? Don't tell me you are just here for sightseeing? What exactly are you waiting for? It had been 4 months, and nothing had happened. The construction of Meng Fortress and all 270 outposts had been completed, and all defensive formations had been deployed. The front line of Meng Mountains had formed a complete defensive circle. However, the Qin army was nowhere to be seen, and no one knew where the army led by Xiangyu was hiding. The feeling of having 2 ferocious tigers hiding right next to him was not a pleasant one, especially since Wuxia was now in the front line, and was also the deputy chief supervisor of Westfield headquarters. It was even more unpleasant for him. Wuxia cursed angrily, then flipped his left hand and looked at the earth element dragon scale shield on his wrist. Only then did he feel slightly relieved. After extorting over 30,000 dragon scales from Wanying Dragon King, Wuxia had selected a batch of the best quality dragon scales and fused them into the shield, refining it once again. Now, when the shield was activated, 36,000 dragon scales would soar up and cover his entire body according to the number of circulations. No matter it was the defensive strength or the offensive strength, it was much stronger than before. Nourished by the innate earth element energy essence, these dragon scales were growing stronger at all times. Wuxia calculated in his mind that if these dragon scales were not damaged in the next 1,000 to 800 years, perhaps all the dragon scales would be upgraded to the toughness of a heaven immortal realm true dragon armor. Stroking the smooth surface of the shield, Wu Qi's mood gradually calmed down. No matter what Ing Zheng and Xiangyu were planning, with this shield, Wu Qi had the confidence to save his own life. However, the feeling of having someone peeping at him from behind was not a pleasant one. On this warm spring night, Wu Qi suddenly had an impulse to destroy something. It would be the best if he could kill someone and see some blood, as that would make his mood much better. The Xiongqing brothers next door were roaring with laughter, as if they were fighting over the last female bear. This bunch of blind bears, I wish them kidney deficiency for the rest of their lives. Wu Qi cursed viciously at this bunch of demon bears who still did not sleep in the middle of the night. Then he rode a cloud and flew towards a small mountain outside Meng Fortress. This small mountain was a part of the defensive system of Meng Fortress, and it was densely surrounded by countless defensive formations. The person who was responsible for guarding this small mountain was none other than Nie Baihong, who had volunteered himself. In Ji City, Nie Yaonu claimed that she was going into a secluded cultivation to break through the nascent soul realm, but in fact, she was wholeheartedly cultivating and developing the overall strength of heaven-breaking sword sect's inner sect in the mine located deep in Meng Mountains. Therefore, Nie Baihong had become the person with the highest authority in heaven-breaking sword sect in name. As Great Yin was going to wage war against the outside world, it was his duty to lead a group of Jin Dan elders to guard Meng Fortress. As the cloud approached the nameless small mountain, a sword beam immediately shot out and stopped before Wu Qi. With an unsightly expression, Qin Shuwen blocked Wu Qi's path and asked with a gloomy voice, "Wu Qi, what is your intention of coming here in the middle of the night?" Looking at Qin Shuwen, Wu Qi smiled. Nie Baihong was not a kind and benevolent man. This time he volunteered himself to bring the elite elder Jin Dan elders of heaven-breaking sword sect to Meng Fortress to help in the war, and all 27 elder Jin Dan elders were Yan Li's trusted subordinates. When facing the mighty Qin army, even gold core elders could be killed at any time. Qin Shuwen, who was forced to follow Nie Baihong to the front line, had no choice but to follow Nie Baihong to the front line. It would be strange if he could show Wu Qi a pleasant expression. Shaking his head, Wu Qi smiled and said, "So it is Elder Qin who is on night watch today? It has been tough on you, really tough on you. I'll definitely report this to the chief supervisor of Ming City, and make sure that Elder Qin will be rewarded with a great military merit." Taking a deep breath, Wu Qi looked up at the bright moon in the sky and said with an indifferent tone, "Elder Qin, please tell the sect leader that the moon is bright and beautiful tonight, and Wu Qi suddenly has the desire to kill someone. Therefore he is here to stab him with his sword. Ask him if he still remembers that innocent girl on the pleasure boat in the myriad red river. Tonight is such a beautiful night, and it is the auspicious day when Wu Qi is going to stab him with his sword." Qin Shuwen was struck dumb and didn't say a word for a long while. At last, he gave Wu Qi a strange look, and a gloating smile emerged on his face. "Are you saying that you are going to stab sect leader with your sword? Ha, Wu Qi, you are rebelling against your superiors. You are?" The deep and powerful voice of Nie Baihong was heard coming from afar. "Qin Shuwen, shut up, and do what you should do." A white light flashed as Nie Baihong, who was shrouded in an immense sword energy, appeared right next to Qin Shuwen. He looked a few times fiercer than the first time Wu Qi saw him. He pressed his palm onto Qin Shuwen's body, unleashing an unparalleled sword energy that knocked Qin Shuwen several thousand feet away. He coughed out a mouthful of blood and slammed into a huge tree. Qin Shuwen gave Nie Baihong a venomous look, who was shrouded in a murderous aura, lowered his head and squeezed into the dark shadow. Raising his head and looking at Wu Qi, Nie Baihong asked in an indifferent tone, "I've been waiting for this sword of yours for a few months. You've already formed the Jin Dan, so why did you only come to me now? Thinking that such a sword was waiting for me, I couldn't eat or sleep well for the past few days." Wu Qi smiled, looked at the bright moon in the sky and said, "Tonight is a nice night, so I want to see some blood." Nie Baihong smiled and asked, "Is there any other reason?" Wu Qi moved his fingers and calculated for a while, then said hesitantly, "If I remember correctly, Wu Qi will be 18 years old when the sun rises, right? Just consider it as a birthday gift for myself, can't you?" Nie Baihong was stunned. "You're only 18 years old? Forming the Jin Dan? You little." Monster. After being stunned for a while, Nie Baihong knitted his brows and asked, "Are you really only 18 years old? I thought you should be at the same age as Duke Yanlu, almost 30 years old, right?" Wu Qi touched his chin, chuckled and said, "Look at my youthful face, how can I be so old? Is an 18 years old Jin Dan that rare? Wu Qi is just lucky, and had some fortuitous encounters. That's why he has formed the Jin Dan at such a young age." Nie Baihong nodded his head slowly. As he was about to say something, Wu Qi suddenly narrowed his eyes. He waved his right hand, unleashing a dark sword beam that contained an invincible and fierce sword energy, piercing through Nie Baihong's chest in a blink of an eye. Nie Baihong let out a miserable howl. His chest was pierced by Wu Qi's sword beam, and a see-through hole about the size of a human head appeared. Blood sprayed out from his mouth as he was knocked flying several miles away, slamming into the cliff behind him. Wu Qi looked at Nie Baihong, who was knocked flying away, and said in a leisurely manner, "Today, you have roughly mastered the control of the wood element orb. That's why I stabbed you with this sword. With the protection of the wood element orb, at least you won't die, and at most, you will have to suffer some pain. Master, I hope you will remember this in the future. You and I are both a pitiful worm struggling in this world, and neither of us is nobler than the other." Taking a deep breath, Wu Qi said in a deep voice, "In the future, before you kill someone with your sword, please think about this sword strike of mine before you strike." Suddenly, Wu Qi wielded his sword beam and transformed into a dark beam, shooting towards the depth of Meng Mountains. After sprinting for several thousand miles, Wu Qi came to the peak of a lofty mountain. Standing on the peak and looking at the silver moon hanging above his head, which was as big as a basin, Wu Qi suddenly threw his head back and cried out, "Master! Xiaobai! Wu Qi is 18 years old now. I'm an adult now. Damn it, I miss you so much." Abruptly, he stretched out both hands, unleashing countless tiny sword beams that shattered the lofty mountain under his feet. Tears were streaming down Wu Qi's face. Suddenly he cried out, "I really fucking miss you so much. I'm alone here." Wu Qi threw his head back and roared, "I don't want to be alone here. I want to go back. I miss you. I miss my dead brothers." Shrill howls of wolves could be heard coming from afar, mixing together with Wu Qi's roars and shouts, making them indistinguishable. Chapter 235. He threw his head back and roared into the sky. Large sheets of sword energies kept bursting out from the Jin Dan, transforming into mighty sword beams that tore through the void and shattered the lofty mountain beneath his feet. The acquired energies of 5 elements in his 8 extraordinary meridians, 12 principal meridians, and the main meridians kept rushing into the Jin Dan like a rising tide. Driven by the unity of sword energies script, they were quickly transformed into sword energies that were 10 times purer than ordinary sword energies. 5 acquired spirit pearls were wheeling rapidly around the Jin Dan, emanating an enormous pressure that had shrunk the size of Wu Qi's Jin Dan by half. The density of the condensed sword energies had become higher, purer, and more powerful. As the most profound technique of heaven-breaking sword sect, the core of the unity of sword energies script was to transform the energies into unique sword energies of 5 elements. After being highly compressed and condensed, once the sword energies of 5 elements were unleashed by heaven-breaking sword sect's 5 elements sword technique, their power would be at least a few times stronger than when unleashed by ordinary energies. Because of the spirit pearls of 5 elements, the degree of condensation of Wu Qi's sword energies was far greater than that of Nie Yaonu and Nie Baihong, and the power of his sword energies was even more unstoppable. "Master Xiaobai and brothers!" Wu Qi thrust both palms up into the sky, unleashing nearly all the sword energies of 5 elements he had condensed in his body at the same time. 2 dazzling beams that looked like flood dragons soared several tens of miles high into the sky, accompanied by loud swishing noises, and only faded away after a long while. Wu Qi closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He circulated the unity of sword energies script over and over again, seizing the opportunity when the spirit pearls of 5 elements suddenly became agitated. He quickly condensed his energies and transformed them into sword energies of 5 elements. After the transformation, The energies that filled the main meridians in his body were transformed into wisps of sword energies that were incredibly dense and thin like mist, flowing quickly in his meridians. Once again, his meridians became empty. Not far away from him, a lady clad in black clothes was seen riding on a 7-colored deer on top of a slightly shorter mountain. The woman's hair fluttered behind her like a cloud. She was so beautiful and elegant that she didn't look like she was in a trance. She looked like a soulless ghost, staring blankly at Wuxia, who was crazily venting his anger on the mountaintop a few miles away. The night wind blew the woman's black dress, and the light muslin dress fluttered silently, adding a bit of charm to the air. The long dress that was blown by the wind clung tightly to the woman's curvaceous body, outlining the perfect curves of her body. Riding on the back of the elk, the woman was like a ball of frozen flame, deep and cold, mysterious and strange, giving people the illusion that they couldn't help but want to get closer, but once they did, they would be burned by the raging flames. Her hazy eyes stared at Wuxia. Her flawless red lips suddenly opened and closed slightly. She sighed in a low voice. He is also a heartbroken person. She gently patted on the elk and drove it away. Then her body moved slightly and arrived behind Wuxia without causing any ripple of energy. The long dress on her body suddenly fell apart, turning into countless black gossamer threads that drifted in all directions, revealing a naked body that looked like it was carved out of white jade, with soft and beautiful lines. She spread her arms and gently hugged Wuxia's waist from behind, gently twisting her waist. You Wuxia? What an interesting kid, really interesting. Are you really cultivating that kind of childish cultivation technique that can sever human nature? I don't believe it. The woman's red lips gently pressed against Wuxia's earlobe. She had a very tall stature, half a fist taller than Wuxia. However, her body was slender and graceful, like a green bamboo amidst the morning mist in the mountains. Her swaying body was so beautiful that it could take one's breath away. Her long legs had already wrapped around Wuxia's body. Her body was slightly trembling, whispering into Wuxia's ear in a low voice. The mountain wind is very cold, and the night is still young. Are you going to let me be disturbed by the cold wind here? Why don't you hug me? What are you waiting for? Wuxia's body turned stiff. He didn't even notice this woman's trace just now, and he didn't even know how this woman came to his back. However, judging from the touch of her body, the scent of her body, and the deep and lingering voice in his ear, Wuxia didn't need to turn his head to know that this was a devastatingly beautiful woman. However, when faced with such a strange appearance, and a woman who had wrapped her arms around his body the moment they met, Wuxia didn't feel any charm from her. Instead, cold sweat broke out from all over his body. His body was stiff, and he was ready to summon the 100 longbow men from the spirit breeding ring. The woman's fingers lightly ran across Wuxia's body, gently brushing past 2 sensitive spots on his chest. In the wilderness, there is no one around. The night is long and lonely, and the night wind is cold. It's fate that we can meet each other. I won't hurt you, and you won't hurt me. I'm a woman and you're a man. We'll spend the night together, and when the sun rises tomorrow, you and I will be strangers. I don't seek to be with you all the time. I just want a night of pleasure. What are you waiting for? A gust of hot wind with a faint aroma blew into Wuxia's ear, instantly destroying most of the wariness in his heart. He clenched his right hand, and the sword of greedy wolf transformed into a beam of dark light, and fell into his hand. He raised his right hand, about to thrust the sword into the woman's body. If you want to kill me, then do it now. The woman said coolly, but I hope you can give up the sword in your hand, and use another weapon to pierce my body. A man, a real man. How could he only use the sword in his hand? These cold swords might be able to conquer the world, but if you want to conquer a woman like me, what you need is this divine weapon. The woman's hand slid down from Wuxia's body, then forcefully grabbed onto Wuxia's vital part. Her slender and beautiful fingers gently pinched a few times, and Wuxia felt a stream of hot air rushing up from the soles of his feet to his head. Suddenly, every vein and muscle in his body was filled with hot blood, and every part of his body had become as hard as steel and as hot as fire. Oh yes, this is the divine weapon I need. Put down the sword in your hand. I just want a night of pleasure. With a strange seduction, The woman whispered into Wu Qi's ear. I am a woman, a very, very beautiful woman. My body, among all the beauties, is also the most beautiful body. I can give you the greatest pleasure. She giggled, licked Wu Qi's earlobe with her red tongue and said, Also, I am a married woman. Don't you men always like to have bad thoughts towards other men's women? I am a beauty who can topple a nation, and I am someone else's woman. Are you really not tempted at all? Or perhaps, you don't have the courage to do so? The fingers that were gripping onto Wu Qi's vital part tightened abruptly, causing Wu Qi to feel a sharp pain. The woman said mockingly, Or in fact this thing of yours is just a decoration, useless to women. Or perhaps, you still don't know how to deal with women? In the middle of the night, in the wilderness, a beautiful woman appeared like a ghost, and even exposed her body to seduce him. Wu Qi felt as if he had fallen into an unreal dream. Everything was hazy and hazy. The temptation of the woman was so great that even Wu Qi didn't want to use the 7 holy deities and devils to calm his restless mind. Instead, he reached out and wrapped his arms around the woman's slender and strong waist, which was as smooth as jade. The moment he touched her, the skin of the woman was like a deep swamp, sucking Wu Qi's hand and soul deep into it. Wu Qi murmured to himself, I don't have any experience. Come on, my theoretical experience is more than enough to be a skill teacher for all the people in this world. The woman laughed provocatively and said, You have experience? Then, come and pamper me. In the next moment, Wu Qi's clothes had turned into ashes, and in the time it took to snap one's fingers, Wu Qi had entered deeply into the woman's body. He was like a piece of vajra that had been tempered 100 times, while the woman was like a melting pot that could melt gold and iron into liquid. They collided and rubbed against each other, splashing and splashing a large amount of steaming hot liquid metal. Again and again, puddles after puddles. Wu Qi had poured all of his spirit and energy into the first hand-to-hand combat in his life. When he was about the 20th time when his body broke down inside the woman's body, the faces of Princess Zhongli and Yutan suddenly appeared in front of him. After that, he was struck by an extremely evil and strange pleasure. Like the Xiongqing brothers, he howled and roared, turned the woman's body to another angle, and plunged deep into her body once again. The night passed in silence. At noon of the next day, Wu Qi and the woman woke up in a valley 100 miles away, hugging each other. Their bodies were intertwined with each other, fusing together without any reservation. Wu Qi still had a strong desire. Right in that valley, by the stream, on top of a large patch of flowers, they once again fell in love with each other. At dusk, the two, who had exhausted all their energy, slowly separated from each other, and put on their clothes. Wu Qi frowned, looked at the woman in front of him, and asked coldly, Who are you? The woman gently combed her hair while facing the stream, giggled and said, Me? I am Yuji. I have a husband who is a mighty hero, and his name is Xiangyu. Perhaps, you've already met him? He is a true hero. How can a little boy like you compare to him? Wu Qi was so angry that he almost choked. He stuck out his chest and said, Which part of me is inferior to him? Any man would be as angry as Wu Qi when he heard the woman he had just slept with say that he was inferior to another man. But soon, cold sweat broke out all over Wu Qi's body. He suddenly realized what the woman had said just now. She was Yuji, that Yuji. And her husband was that Xiangyu, the hegemon king of Western Shu. What had Wu Qi done? He had spent half the night last night, and the entire day doing that with Xiangyu's woman. He looked at Yuji in shock and shouted sternly, You why? Yuji smiled coquettishly and gently stroked the bun that she had tied up. She said softly, No reason, I'm just happy. After a slight pause, Yuji frowned and sighed softly. Maybe it's because I'm too lonely? Too bored? I haven't seen him for many years, and now I'm going to see him. Maybe I was too loyal to him in the past? I just want to do something to let him down now. Puffing out her towering breasts, Yuji giggled and said, He's too proud, so I want to find a man he will never look at in the eye and try this feeling of letting him down. You're the kind of man who has no right to be compared to him, so I did this with you. I'm very happy now, and my body is very happy. You've done very well in this matter. With a self-deprecating smile, Yuji said softly, It's just that, in my heart, it's very uncomfortable. I actually spent a night with a little kid like you. It's not worth it. Slowly standing up, Yuji said softly. For the sake of the great joy you've given me for the past day and night, I won't kill you. She hugged Wuqi and kissed Wuqi's lips hard. Then Yuji took a few steps back and said with a sneer, when I want to do something to let him down again, I'll come find you again. You must think of me. My body is much better than your young princess's. With a ghostly chuckle, Yuji's body suddenly disappeared. With Wuqi's current cultivation, he didn't even notice how she left. Wuqi looked around in a daze. He felt that he was being raped both physically and mentally. Suddenly, he swung his sword and struck the cliff in front of him. Yuji. Xiangyu. Fuck me. Fuck you. Chapter 236. After cutting off a lofty mountain with just one sword strike, Wuqi let out a long, gloomy cry. With his body riddled with scars and the heart of a young man filled with an indescribable feeling, he stepped on a beam of light and fled back to Meng Fortress in a sorry state. What happened tonight was like the first wet dream of a young man, leaving an unforgettable memory in Wuqi's mind. The seven-colored deer was leaping gracefully between the mountains. Sitting on its back, Yuji stretched her back lazily, covered her little mouth with her hand and yawned. Her fair face was tinged with an intoxicating blush, and her eyes were brimming with tears. She was smiling faintly, as if she was still reminiscing the intimate moment she spent with Wuqi, which lasted for nearly a whole day. All of a sudden, a sonorous tune of a flute was heard coming from the top of a mountain nearby. Raising her brows in surprise, Yuji gave a soft cry. Suddenly, a three-colored cloud burst out from under the seven-colored deer's feet. Then it soared up into the sky and flew towards the mountain. On the top of the mountain was a lady with an appearance similar to Yuji's that could bring calamity to the world. But she had a solemn expression, giving off a feeling that she was as pure as ice and as pure as jade. She was sitting cross-legged under a lone pine tree. In her hand was a jade flute with a strange shape. The 6-feet-long jade flute was very thin, and the color of translucent egg white. It was smooth and soft, and its inner surface was faintly exposed, with a few tiny golden runes faintly visible on the flute. At the end of the jade flute, 3 long green feathers were tied with silver silk. The feathers were bright and lustrous, emitting a smooth luster like clear water. A huge amount of spiritual energy was constantly spurting out from the feathers, nourishing the jade flute at all times. After being absorbed and transformed by the jade flute, a thread of extremely pure and rich natural energy kept flowing into the lady's finger, then spread to every corner of her body. The 7-colored deer flew up to the top of the mountain, and Yuji lightly leaped down from its back. She gave the lady a glance with a smile, then bowed gracefully and said, Yuji offers greeting to the Empress of Daqin, Elder Sister Yuyao, Your Majesty. May I know why Elder Sister is sitting here? Could it be that you are waiting for me? Yuyao lightly flicked the jade flute with her jade-like finger, and said in an indifferent tone, You're interested in a little boy who hasn't even grown his hair yet? If that tyrant of yours knew that you had given yourself to such a young boy, wouldn't he poke a hole in the sky? Yuji giggled, walked to the side of Yuyao and sat down slowly. With a soft voice she said, I've taken a fancy to this tender little girl. Could it be that his sister was also interested in him? If there is, Yuji will go and capture him right now, and let Elder Sister have a good time. Yuji let out an intoxicated sigh, narrowed her eyes and revealed an intoxicated smile. Very good. Yuji enjoyed it very much. Yuji is also really strange. This is really the first time this child is having fun with a woman. Why does he know so many strange tricks? Yuyao remained silent. She gently waved the jade flute, and a gust of wind blew through the small holes on the flute, letting out a clear buzzing noise. She frowned and said, This kid is weird, I don't like him. I wonder why both you and Yutan have taken a fancy to him. Is this little boy really so good? Yuyao laughed, shook her head and said, I hate people who are full of lies the most in my life. Last time, he told Yutan that he is cultivating some virgin technique. But this time, humph. A light snort was heard coming from a distance, as a strong and agile black leopard suddenly leaped up to the top of the mountain like a bolt of lightning. A beautiful lady, clad in a black light armor and holding a 16-feet-long coiling dragon crescent blade, leaped down from the back of the black leopard and stood firmly in front of the two girls. A breeze blew across, fluttering the long hair of the lady. A threatening heroic spirit burst out from her body, and she looked like a general. She thrust the blade in her hand forcefully into the ground, and the egg-thick blade sank 3 feet deep into the ground without making a sound. The lady in black armor looked at Yuji, giggled and said, "Sister Yuji is indeed a man with no fear. You really went to pluck that Wuxia's true yang? That little boy is indeed full of lies, and not a single word of truth came out of his mouth. To think that Yutan had given him a spirit pill, which helped him condense the Jin Dan. If I knew that he would spend the night with you, I would not have given him a spirit pill, but a poison instead." Yuji giggled, then winked at Yutan and said, "You are jealous that I could capture him, but he did not pay any attention to you, am I right? Well, Sister Yu Yao is the best at scheming, and Yutan, your cultivation base is the strongest. As for Yuji, she can't decide the victory in the imperial court, and she can't fight on the battlefield. All she is good at is these little tricks." Suddenly, a trace of bitterness emerged on Yuji's face. She sighed and said, "Yuji has been using these little tricks to please others for so many years, but this is just a little fun for myself. Could it be that Sister Yu Yao and Sister Yutan, must you always speak ill of me?" Yutan gave Yuji a deep look and shook her head. Yu Yao, on the other hand, sighed softly and said, "All right, put away your attitude of a little girl. You can make all the men under the heaven crazy for you, but so what? To us, it is useless. We have been together for over 2,000 years, and it is our destiny. When we meet again in the future, I have no idea what kind of situation it will be. I am going to look for my man." Yuji lifted her head up and looked at a wisp of white cloud in the sky. She sighed and said, "Yuji is going to be entangled with Sister Yutan, never to be separated for the rest of their lives." "Who wants to be entangled with you for the rest of their lives?" Yutan said angrily. Yuji looked at Yutan with surprise, chuckled and said, "Yuji is going to look for King Xiangyu. He is now a minister of Great Chu. Sister Yutan is going back to Great Chu as well. Isn't Duke of Chunshan her old lover? Xiangyu and Wuxia are both ministers of Great Chu now. Since we are going back to look for them, doesn't that mean we have to take care of each other, never to be separated for the rest of our lives?" Yutan put on a straight face. She gripped the crescent blade tightly and said coolly, "Wuxia, that old fool." Yuji gently swayed her body and laughed softly. "Wuxia, that old trash." Looking at his fat body, Yuji feels uncomfortable all over. When she thought that Sister Yutan is going to send herself to that old fatty and let him have his fun, she felt that it was a waste of heaven's gift. Why don't Sister Yutan go and look for Wuxia as well? That way, that old fool will not take away your yin energy and waste your over 2,000 years of painstaking cultivation. A blade beam flashed. Yutan held the long blade in her hand and swung it towards Yuji's neck with a cold gleam. Yuji giggled, then took the initiative to extend her tender and beautiful long neck to the edge of the blade. A loud clang rang out. The crescent blade bounced back and sent out a large amount of sparks. However, there was not even a red mark on Yuji's fair and delicate neck. Yutan shook her wrist and swung the blade again, hacking 99 times on Yuji's body. Yuji giggled and casually took off all her clothes. Her beautiful and flawless body took the initiative to greet the blade. A series of metallic clangs kept ringing out. Sparks flew in all directions from Yuji's body, but there was not even a scratch on her. In a blink of an eye, Yutan had hacked 99 times, then abruptly sheathed the blade and stepped back. Yuji let out a moan while gasping for breath. Twisting her slender waist, she took a few steps back slowly. She looked down at her fair and flawless body complacently, giggled and said, "Yuji's celestial technique of Goddess Xian has made some achievements. Indeed, I am not afraid of any metal weapons anymore. Unless there is an innate spirit treasure, or a magical weapon that is not a metal weapon, no one can hurt even a single hair of Yuji." Yutan laughed coldly. A clump of cold mist sprayed out from her face, and her facial features changed abruptly. Although she was still as beautiful and enchanting as before, she looked completely different from her previous appearance. She took a light breath, then clenched her fist and threw a punch towards Yuji's chest. Yuji, who had been smiling sweetly all the time, suddenly had a serious look on her face. She quickly raised both of her little hands and drew a taiji symbol in front of her chest, then gently pushed both of her hands outwards. The 3 feet diameter void in front of her suddenly shattered, turning into a pitch-black hole that could not see any light. The surrounding void twisted. Yu-Tan and Yuji trembled and retreated several tens of feet at the same time. Holding the jade flute in her hand, Yu-Yao nodded with a smile and said, Yuji's celestial technique of goddess Xian has reached 70% mastery. Metal weapons can't hurt her at all. The 2,000 years of hard work is worth it. Yu-Tan's heaven-breeding script of goddess Su has also reached 70% mastery, which is more than enough to deal with any unforeseen circumstances. You and I, the 3 of us, have been together for more than 2,000 years, but today, we have to separate again. Sighing lightly, Yu Yao looked up at the sky and said coolly, This is our destiny. When we meet again in the future, you and I will no longer be sisters. Even if we have to fight on the battlefield and kill each other with our own hands, this is also our destiny. Who asked our man to be such a peerless hero? Yuji laughed mockingly and said, Peerless hero? Hee. Tilting her head up proudly, Yuji said coolly, He can't do anything about the fact that I've secretly eaten a young and tender little boy. Hee. I really want to see his expression when he finds out that I've had an affair with him. Yu Yao and Yu-Tan exchanged a glance, then breathed out a deep sigh at the same time. Yu-Tan came next to Yuji and gave her a tight hug. Yu Yao rose to her feet slowly, and came next to both of them. She stretched out her long arms and gave both of them a tight hug. 6 streams of tears flowed down the faces of the 3 girls, and they began to weep together. But very soon, all 3 of them stopped crying at the same time. Yu Yao said coolly, What are we still complaining about when we have been together for over 2,000 years? Among us 3 sisters, as the eldest sister, I am the luckiest one. Although Yingzheng has done many wrong things, he has treated me very well. Yuji Yu-Tan, it's true that you've suffered a lot. But this is our fate and it's not up to us. Yu Yao let go of them, took a few steps back, cupped her fist and bowed to Yuji and Yu-Tan, and said, When we meet again in the future, Yu Yao will definitely try every possible way to kill both of you. The celestial technique of goddess Xian and heaven-breeding script of goddess Su are extremely powerful. And Yu Yao will never let Xiangyu and Wuxia have experts like my 2 younger sisters by their side. In the future, when my 2 younger sisters are schemed against by someone, please don't blame Yu Yao. Yuji casually put on her clothes and said with a chuckle, Yuji will not show any mercy to the 2 sisters. Once I have the chance, I'll personally dig out my sisters' hearts and make them into soup. Especially sister Yu Yao's heart of 7 orifices. I've been drooling over it for a long time. Yu-Tan, on the other hand, pulled out a long blade, mounted on the Black Panther, and rode away towards the south without saying a word. Yuji bowed gently to Yu Yao, then suddenly sprung forward like a ghost, reaching out her claw and grabbing towards Yu Yao's chest. A chuckle was heard, as Yu Yao's body suddenly shone with a dazzling golden light. 12 36 feet tall golden demon figurines appeared out of thin air, waving their fists and smashing them down towards Yuji's head. Yuji was taken aback. Hastily, she retreated and cried out sternly, Daqin is one of the 12 golden demon figurines of the kingdom. So elder sister has met with Yingzheng in secret? You are indeed a treacherous and almost shameless elder sister. Abruptly, Yuji's body transformed into a clump of white light and vanished without a trace. Yu Yao stretched herself and stared blankly at the direction where Yuji and Yu-Tan disappeared. The beloved concubine of the hegemon king of Western Chu, Yuji. The empress of Great Chu, Li Yueyan. Oh my dear sisters. She focused her eyes, and a ruthless and cruel smile emerged on the corner of her mouth. Somebody, send a scout to Great Yan's territory and spread the news that Yuji, the beloved concubine of the hegemon king of Western Chu, was raped by Wu Qi, Duke of Tianyan of Great Yan. Chapter 237. For the next 7 days, Wu Qi stayed in a secluded cultivation, focusing all his attention on absorbing the extremely pure innate energy that suddenly appeared in his body. It was extremely pure, even comparable to the clump of innate earth element energy essence that Wuxia used to craft the earth element dragon scale shield. On top of that, it was extremely strong, almost as strong as the innate purple energy essence that could only be formed by an ordinary nascent divinity cultivator after several hundred years of arduous cultivation. It was as if someone had cultivated arduously for several thousand years, condensed a precious innate purple energy essence, which was used by nascent divinity cultivators to temper and strengthen their nascent divinity, and injected it into Wuqi's body through some special method. When an ordinary Jindan cultivator encountered an innate energy essence of this level, he or she would not even be able to sense its existence. But to Wuqi, it was like a hungry wolf that had just seen a piece of fresh meat, and could not wait to start absorbing and digesting it. Inside his 7 stealing heaven meridians, 10 bright false cores were absorbing the innate energy essence that nearly filled up Wuqi's body with all their might. When the energy essence that contained an enormous amount of energy essence was absorbed by Wuqi's false cores, it gradually formed into wisps of innate nectar that glinted with the color of white jade, and was as sticky as a jade paste. Nourished by the innate nectar, Wuqi's false cores gradually solidified and hardened. From a hazy, shadowy shape, it quickly condensed into a real Jindan that was the size of a grain of rice, glinting with a golden luster. The innate nectar had saved Wuqi from several hundred years of arduous cultivation. If he relied on devouring other people's Jindan and demon cores to purify the innate nectar, perhaps he would need at least 100,000 Jindan and demon cores to achieve the same result. While absorbing the innate energy essence, Wuqi was pondering about its origin. Recently, he did not have any other fortuitous encounters, except for that one night with Yuji, which was the most unimaginable encounter he had in the past few days. He could still remember the wonderful enjoyment brought to him by Yuji's mesmerizing body. At the same time, in that almost dreamlike state, Wuqi seemed to remember that Yuji was actually still a virgin. She's been with Xiangyu for so many years. How can she still be a virgin? Wuqi tried his best to stimulate his empty core to absorb this vital essence and condense the innate nectar. At the same time, he was surprised by his own discovery. Unless she has cultivated some special cultivation method over the years, and her body has been tempered by the heavenly thunder more than once, it's impossible for her to have such a miraculous change. But it was a pity that at that time he was only focused on squeezing out Yuji's body with all his might, desperately enjoying the indescribable wonderful feeling, and did not have the time to use all kinds of mystic arts and scroll of stealing to peep at Yuji's body. Otherwise, he would definitely be able to find out if Yuji had cultivated some kind of special cultivation technique. However, this huge amount of pure innate qi could only be a gift from Yuji to Wuqi. A night of pleasure could actually save Wuqi several hundred years of effort in laying the foundation of Jindan realm. Wuqi had really gained both a man and a fortune, a great fortune. However, if I am really an ordinary cultivator of Jindan realm, this innate qi can only stay in my body for at most 3 days before it completely dissipates. This strand of innate qi will only last for 3 days at most before it completely dissipates. At most, it can perform some minor adjustments and tempering on my body, but it can never achieve the effect it has now. While exercising his cultivation, Wuqi was calculating the cause and effect of this incident. An ordinary human immortal of Jindan realm would never be able to discover the existence of this innate qi, and he would not have a suitable cultivation technique to absorb and harvest this innate qi, which would bring him the greatest benefit. An ordinary human immortal of Jindan realm would not be able to discover the existence of this innate qi, and he did not have a suitable cultivation technique to absorb and harvest this innate qi, which would bring him the greatest benefit. Wuqi was a special case, as he was cultivating with an innate level cultivation technique. Therefore, he was able to make the best use of this innate qi. A few hundred years of effort in laying the foundation was indeed a great gift to him. It seems like that bitch never planned to let me benefit from this. Suddenly, Wuqi came to a realization. With Wu Wang's experience and Lu Xiaobai's insane intelligence, Wuqi had a vague feeling that Yuji had come to him with a trace of resentment toward Xiangyu. It seemed like the couple had a quarrel, and Yuji had come to him at all costs, just to get back at Xiangyu. Of course, there seemed to be some other reasons, But they were not the main ones. There was a conflict between Xiang Yu and Yu Ji. Wuqi let out a heavy breath and sprayed out a stream of sword energy, shattering a few hassocks and a few short tables in the quiet room. Frowning, Wuqi rose to his feet and slowly stopped the circulation of the cultivation technique in his body. The couple had a conflict, and in the end, Wuqi was dragged into it. If it were some other woman, it would not be a big deal, as Wuqi would not suffer any loss. But Yu Ji was Xiang Yu's woman, the woman of Xiang Yu, the hegemon king of Western Chu, who led 80,000 mighty soldiers of Xiang Yu and fought head-on with Ing Zheng. Xiang Yu already had a profound cultivation base, and he was accompanied by an ancient fiend, the banner of Qiyu. Wuqi did not think he could withstand Xiang Yu's astonishing fury. At least, he did not have the ability and power to fight against the astonishing power held in Xiang Yu's hands. But that bitch Yu Ji wouldn't be so stupid as to tell Xiang Yu about this, would she? No matter how much Xiang Yu loves her, he will not accept a woman who takes the initiative to betray him, right? While he was calculating the impact this incident would have on him, and the possible threats it might pose to him in the future, all of a sudden, a vast wave of natural energies came surging towards him from all directions. Accompanied by a wild gust of wind, the room where he was cultivating in seclusion was pulled up into the sky, together with its foundation. A loud boom rang out. As Wuqi felt his legs go limp, the ground around him was pulled up into the sky by the strong wind, and a huge pit, nearly 1,000 feet deep, was created under his feet. He glanced around in astonishment, then instinctively activated the earth element dragon scale shield to protect himself, while the chariot of 8 horses was ready to take action. Once something went wrong, the chariot would immediately bring him and flee at the fastest speed. A dense earthen yellow light enveloped Wuqi's body, while several tens of thousands of golden dragon scales densely formed into a thick and heavy armor on Wuqi's body, protecting him from the elements. Wuqi looked around in astonishment, and saw many figures moving around him. They were palace guards clad in green outfits, and bear demons of Black Wind Hollow, who were clad in heavy armors. Standing in front of all palace guards and bear demons were Xiong-jin and Xiong-yin, holding a pair of large axes in their hands. They narrowed their tiny eyes and stared at Wuqi. Xiong-jin shook his head and said, "Brother Wuqi, you're in a big trouble. Tell me to make Princess Zhonglu so angry like that. What kind of crime have you committed? What kind of crime have you committed? What kind of crime have you committed? What kind of crime have you committed?" Me. Wuqi pointed his finger at his own nose, staring blankly at the palace guards and bear demons, and said in astonishment, "What have I done? What are you guys doing?" Before Xiong-jin could answer, Princess Zhongli's shrill cry had already echoed out. A 5-colored divine ray swept across the sky, and with Meng Fortress as the center, a rainstorm suddenly fell across the entire Three Mountains province. Even though the weather in the vicinity of Meng Mountains was extremely harsh, the natives who had been living here for several hundred years had never seen such an exaggerated rainstorm. Raindrops the size of a fist fell down from the sky without any gap between them, producing deep, muffled noises as they hit the ground. The force of each raindrop was like a small cannonball, shattering the mountain rocks and collapsing all the buildings that had just been repaired in Meng Fortress. A strong gust of wind rolled the dark clouds and slowly descended from the sky. Amidst the dense cloud pillars, Princess Zhonglu was seen waving her arms and legs, staring fixedly at Wuqi with her eyes wide open. The 5-colored divine ray behind her back was rolling and rocking, turning the natural energies within several thousand miles of circumference into a mess. Suddenly, to Wuqi's surprise, Princess Zhongli's cultivation base had actually risen to the middle stage of Jindan realm. How long had it been since she formed the Jindan realm? And yet, she had already reached the middle stage of Jindan realm. How did she actually cultivate? Wuqi could still remember that not long ago, she still needed to do some homework every day between midnight and midnight to stabilize her cultivation base of Jindan realm. So, how did she suddenly reach the middle stage of Jindan realm? Before Wuqi could figure out the question, Princess Zhonglu had already pointed her finger at Wuqi and cried out, "Wuqi, you bastard! You with me here. How could you have the intention to touch another girl? You. Abruptly, the ever-changing yin and yang Sumai spun out from behind Princess Zhanglu. He clapped the fan in his hand, pointed his finger at Wuqi and snapped. Wuqi, you are the most shameless man under the heaven. How dare you? How dare you rape the beloved concubine of Xiangyu, the hegemon king of Western Chu? You. Wuqi was stunned. How did everyone under the heaven know about this? However, he also found it strange. Even if he had raped Xiangyu's concubine, it would still make sense for Princess Zhanglu to be angry. After all, he and Zhanglu did share a little bit of friendship, and some vague ambiguous feelings between them. But, what does that have to do with you, Sumai? Leaping up into the air, Wuqi came in front of Princess Zhanglu, stared at Sumai coldly and scolded. What does it have to do with you whether I raped another girl or not? I didn't rape your mother. Even if I did, it should be your father, Su Qin, who came looking for trouble with me. What does it have to do with you? Sumai was stunned. He pointed his finger at Wuqi and stammered for a long time, but he could not say a single word. When a scholar met a soldier, it was impossible to reason with him, let alone Wuqi, who was a combination of a soldier, a desperado, and a cultured scum. Although Sumai was a resourceful man, when faced with a shameless man who refused to budge, how could he be a match for Wuqi? Without giving Sumai a chance to speak, Wuqi gave him a slap on the face, sending him flying several thousand feet away with a great force. Wuqi said coldly, "Or I didn't rape that niece of yours. Why are you wasting your breath here?" Princess Zhanglu glared at Wuqi with bloodshot eyes. She did not look like a resentful girl who was betrayed by her beloved, but more like a little kid whose favorite toy was snatched away. She pouted and yelled, "Wuqi, you bastard! How could you rape that woman? Xiong capture Wuqi, castrate him, and bring him into the palace to accompany me." Xiong and Xiong looked at each other, then laughed and answered at the same time. Xiong rubbed his palms together and cried out in joy. "Your Highness, should we use a knife to cut him, or a hammer to smash him? Or, should we get a nest of metal-eating ants and eat this kid alive?" The rain poured down, and the world was covered in a vast expanse. Wuqi stared deeply into Princess Zhongli's bloodshot eyes, then suddenly pounced forward, wrapped his arms around Princess Zhongli's slender waist, and planted a deep kiss on her lips. His tongue easily broke through the slight resistance of Princess Zhanglu, who was at a loss as to what to do, and quickly occupied a large part of her small mouth. After a skillful and lingering French kiss, Wuqi moved closer to Princess Zhongli's ear, and using the unique shameless spirit of Lu Xiaobai, he gently said, "Even when I was being raped by that woman, the one I was thinking about was you." Hundreds of powerful divine senses were observing the situation here. When these mighty cultivators heard what was almost the most shameless thing Wuqi had ever said since the creation of the world, many of them slowly retracted their divine wills with a hint of bewilderment in them. When shamelessness was close to the Tao, the psychological impact it had on these cultivators was no less than a small-scale lightning tribulation. Princess Zhanglu had already softened in Wuqi's arms. She stared blankly at Wuqi and asked in a low voice, "You were you? By that shameless woman?" Wuqi nodded his head and said, "I'm the victim. You're the only one I like. In my heart, the other women are no different from zombies." Princess Zhanglu smiled sweetly, hugged Wuqi tightly, and laughed out loud. Chapter 238. Above Meng Fortress, Yan Dan and his company were seen standing on top of a dark cloud. Yan Qijuan looked down at Wuqi, who was holding Princess Zhanglu in his arms. His face was unsightly. Any father would not be in a good mood when he saw his daughter being easily tricked by a glib-tongued young man, especially when the rumor that Wuqi had raped the beloved concubine of Xiangyu, the hegemon king of Western Chu, was spreading like wildfire in Great Yan Dynasty. How could Yan Qijuan allow his most precious daughter to befriend such a man? Clenching his right fist tightly, Yan Qijuan suddenly raised it up and unleashed a sheet of pale golden thunderbolts, about to punch down. Before he could throw out his fist, a skinny palm had already gently gripped his fist. The thunderbolts on the fist vanished abruptly, as if they had never appeared before. Yan Qijuan turned his head furiously, about to scold the man who dared to stop him. But he quickly retracted his angry face, bowed respectfully to the man and said, "Old Mr. Sun, may I know why you are stopping me?" Sun Quan clasped his hands behind his back, looked at Yan Qijuan with a gentle smile, and said, "Why are you attacking Wu Qi?" Yan Qijuan remained silent for a brief moment, then said coldly, "This young man has an improper conduct. He raped Xiang Yu's beloved concubine, and he even flirted with Zixian with that obscene tone. How could I allow Zixian to befriend such a character? After killing him today, I will naturally select a talented young man from Great Yin Dynasty to marry Zixian, and make her a good marriage." Sun Quan laughed, shook his head and said, "This is considered improper conduct? Crown Prince, you raped Princess Zhongli's mother after you were drunk, and used an energy-seizing pill to force all her blood essence and the ancestral bloodline into Princess Zhongli's body. You also took in several thousand concubines, and over the years, you have robbed several tens of thousands of girls of their chastity after you were drunk. Wu Qi only had one night of pleasure with a girl, but Crown Prince has so many women, and has done all those things. In comparison, doesn't that mean Crown Prince's conduct is no longer tolerated by the heaven and earth?" Yan Dan pursed his lips into a smile, while Mod Su Qin and the others smiled even more brilliantly. Yan Qijuan stared blankly at Sun Quan and said dryly, "Qijuan is a monarch, he. Sun Quan faintly said, "What monarch, minister and minister? What's the difference between you and Wu Qi?" Honestly speaking, his temperament was much better than all the so-called talented young men of Great Yin Dynasty. At least, judging from his face, I can tell he had lost his virginity 7 days ago. As for those young and talented men of Great Yin Dynasty, can you find me a boy who is at least 10 years old? Mod also chuckled and said, "There's no need to talk about the so-called moral conduct." Yan Qijuan opened his mouth, but no words came out. He just frowned and looked at Wu Qi. His eyes flickered, and no one knew what he was thinking. "All right," Yan Dan said coolly. "Who does Zixian like? We don't need to intervene in this matter. Wu Qi is a pretty good kid. Both his innate talent and cultivation base are excellent, and he has formed the Golden Dan before the age of 18. His luck is top-notch. He is a good kid. As for that concubine of Xiang Yu's, no matter he raped her, or the concubine raped him, that's what happened." He snorted coldly. Yan Dan said sternly, "Find out who spread this rumor across the entire Great Yin Dynasty in just 7 days. Anyone who was suspicious would be arrested, tortured, and their families would be exterminated." Are they trying to provoke an all-out war between Great Yin and Great Chu? This must be Da Qin's doing. Su Qin nodded his head slowly and said in a deep voice, "This seems to be the doing of my junior brother, but the method is somewhat different. If it were my junior brother's method, he would not be so stingy, and he would not expose this matter so soon. Instead, he would keep it in his hand quietly, waiting for the time when the value of this matter has reached the maximum before striking. This incident seems to be the doing of a woman." Yan Dan breathed out a long sigh and said, "No matter who is the one behind this, we need to prepare for Xiang Yu's reaction." Before his words could fade away, a shrill neighing of a horse was heard coming from the depth of Meng Mountains in the distance. A blinding blood-red beam shot up into the sky from 1,000 miles away, and in just a blink of an eye, it transformed into a vast and mighty blood energy, rushing towards the direction of Meng Fortress at an incredible speed. As it was a single man riding at top speed, none of the outposts along the way managed to intercept the blood-red beam. In just the time of a few breaths, the blood-red beam had traveled several hundred miles, and in just a blink of an eye, it had arrived at a place less than 300 miles away from Meng Fortress. Coincidentally, there was a mountain that was guarded by cultivators from Indestructible Sect, led by 3 Earth Immortals of Nascent Soul Realm. Several dozens of Jin Dan human immortals from Indestructible Sect let out a furious roar. "Halt!" as they rushed up and blocked the path of the blood-red beam. "Not good!" cried Yan Dan in a low voice. Right after he finished his words, a miserable shriek was heard coming from afar. Amidst the blood-red beam, a long spear shaped like a black dragon was waving at top speed, transforming into numerous cold beams that wheeled in all directions. The several dozens of cultivators from Indestructible Sect, whose bodies were as tough as Vajras, were struck on the forehead, throat, and lower abdomen at the same time. 3 streams of blood as thick as an arm burst out from each of them, and they were knocked flying far away by a coiling dragon spear. The blood-red murderous aura rushed into the bodies of these cultivators, shattering their Jin Dan and nascent souls. The faces of Yen Dan and the others turned extremely gloomy. It was not a big deal to lose several dozens of Jin Dan human immortals. As long as they were willing to pay a great price, Indestructible Sect could even produce a large number of Jin Dan human immortals. However, those 3 Earth immortals were a very precious strategic force. Even for someone like Yen Dan, the loss of 3 Earth immortals of nascent soul realm had made his heart ache. Indestructible Sect paid more attention to the tempering of their fleshly body, and as a result, the ratio of them forming Jin Dan was very high. The number of Jin Dan human immortals in Indestructible Sect was almost equal to the total number of all the other sects in Great Yen. And because they paid too much attention to the tempering of their fleshly body, the cultivators of Indestructible Sect had a very poor ability to comprehend the Tao of heaven and earth. As a result, the Jin Dan human immortals of Indestructible Sect had a huge number of human immortals, but very few nascent soul cultivators. On the other hand, once those Earth immortals of Indestructible Sect formed their nascent souls and went through the tempering of heavenly thunder, their overall strength would be equal to the combined strength of 5 ordinary nascent soul cultivators of the same level. A cultivator with a strong fleshly body and a formidable offensive strength was the most precious main force on the battlefield. But now, 3 of them were killed by Xiangyu amidst the blood-red light. It would be strange if Yen Dan did not feel his heart ache. Wuxia, you punk! Wuxia punk, get your ass out here right now. Amidst the blood-red light, Xiangyu threw his head back and roared furiously. How dare you bully my woman? Get your ass out here right now. In just a blink of an eye, the blood-red light had arrived outside Meng Fortress. Xiangyu casually thrust his spear and thrust it down towards the wall of Meng Fortress. A dragon-shaped blood-red light brought with it a towering killing intent, coiling up countless thunderbolts and dark thunderbolts, as it shot out with a jarring whistle and smashed viciously onto the wall. A large sheet of defensive mechanisms blinked and flickered, as all the defensive mechanisms of Meng Fortress were activated. The blood-red light slammed onto several dozens of layers of defensive mechanisms, breaking 35 of them in a row, causing the entire ground of Meng Fortress to shake violently. Finally, it exploded and shattered into pieces at the last layer of defensive mechanism. Countless thunderbolts struck down from the sky, vanquishing the dark clouds of thunderbolts coiled up by Princess Zhonglu. A large sheet of sunlight sprinkled down, shining on the blood-red light around Xiangyu's body. The blood-red light flickered, and countless human figures could be vaguely seen amidst it. They were the baneful souls formed by the souls of those killed by Xiangyu, who were sucked into the blood-red light. These baneful souls opened their mouths and let out soundless roars. A soundless but real spiritual impact swept across the surroundings, lifting up a thick layer of rock layers outside Meng Fortress. Large chunks of rock layers flew up into the sky and were shattered into countless fragments by the spiritual impact. Wherever Xiangyu passed by, mountains would break, rivers would dry up, and flowers, trees, insects, fishes, birds, and beasts would all turn into dead things. He was like an immortal fiend god who crawled out from the netherworld, bringing nothing but endless destruction and destruction. Long beams of blood-red light shot out from the eyes of the furious Xiangyu, and from time to time, dense blood mist would creep in and out from his 7 apertures. He had completely lost his self-control, turning into a mad fiend. Wuxia, you punk! Come out here and fight me to death! Xiangyu roared fiercely. Come out here and fight me to death. Since you have the courage to touch my woman, you should have the courage to let me stab you 108,000 times with my spear. Holding Princess Zhonglu in his arms, Wuxia landed on the wall of Meng Fortress. From all directions, several tens of thousands of Great Yen Dynasty's cultivators flew up into the sky, injecting their energy into the core of the defensive mechanism of Meng Fortress. A blinding light burst out from the defensive formation, meticulously constructed by the master craftsman from Mo Sect. A strong barrier of light enveloped the entire city, and even a nascent divinity cultivator would find it difficult to break through the defense of Meng Fortress. Standing within the thick barrier of light, Wuqi did not worry about his own safety at all. Even if Xiangyu was the reincarnation of a god of war, there was no way he could break through the defensive mechanism constructed by several tens of thousands of cultivators. Unless it was a real heaven immortal, or several dozens of nascent divinity experts attacking at the same time, the defensive mechanism of Meng Fortress would be unbreakable. Looking at the furious and deranged Xiangyu on the outskirts of the city, Wuqi breathed out a long sigh and said, "Xiangyu, who told you that I raped your woman?" Xiangyu raised his spear and howled. "This has been spread across the entire Great Yin dynasty. Do you think I'm a deaf man?" Wuqi spread his arms, breathed out a long sigh and said, "It was your woman who seduced me and raped me. It was not me who took the initiative to flirt with her." Xiangyu was so angry that blood sprayed out from his mouth. A vast murderous aura towered into the sky, and lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the sky, causing the ground to crack into countless trenches. Xiangyu bellowed furiously, "Bullshit! Bullshit! Yuji, she took the initiative to flirt with you? Yandan, if you are a real man, get the hell out here and tell me about this. Hand over Wuqi and let me stab him to death with my spear. Or else, Great Chu and Great Yin will fight to the death." A beam of blood-red light shot up into the sky from the top of Xiangyu's head, from which 18 giant undead warriors, each standing 10,000 feet tall, strode out while roaring furiously. 36 long arms were raised up high in the air, as these giant undead warriors exerted all their strength and smashed their heavy fists onto the defensive mechanism of Meng Fortress. 18 large mouths were opened wide, and a crimson flame poured down like a waterfall of the Yellow River, bringing with it a frightening temperature that could melt gold and iron. According to Lao AI, the strength of each of these 18 giant undead warriors was comparable to an early-stage nascent divinity cultivator. However, they did not have their own intelligence, and needed someone to control them. When the heavy fists smashed down, 36 small mushroom clouds soared up into the sky from the defensive mechanism. The defensive mechanism of Little Meng City trembled, and managed to block off the attacks of these undead warriors. However, the ground outside of Little Meng City could not withstand such a tremendous impact. A dozen mountain ridges cracked at the same time, and countless huge rocks were thrown up into the sky by the counterforce. 18 streams of crimson flame came whistling down from the sky, enveloping the entire Little Meng City completely. The scorching flame kept eroding the defensive mechanism, producing a large sheet of blinding light. The energy stones in the core of the defensive mechanism were consumed at an incredible speed. However, an attack like this was still not enough to break through the defensive mechanism of Meng Fortress. Wuqi looked at Xiangyu, who was standing outside the city, and couldn't help but shake his head. After all, he did have a night of pleasure with Yuji, and there was nothing he could say about that. However, Princess Zhongli suddenly stuck out her chest, pointed her finger at Xiangyu and scolded, "Xiangyu, you're such a shameless man. Your woman seduced my lover and raped Wuqi. I haven't settled the score with you yet, but you still have the nerve to come knocking on my door." Stomping her foot fiercely, Princess Zhongli snapped, "Somebody capture Xiangyu alive, and ask his subordinates to bring that Yuji here to exchange for him." Tilting her head up proudly, Princess Zhongli twitched her lips, sneered and said, "I'd like to see what kind of face this shameless woman has. If she has a pretty face, she can be Wuqi's concubine. I'm a very broad-minded person." Xiangyu let out a furious roar, and at the same time, hot blood burst out from his 7 apertures. On the other side, Wuqi turned to look at Princess Zhonglu in shock. Her words had given Wuqi a great shock. Chapter 239. Stunned, Wuqi stared blankly at Princess Zhonglu and asked in a low voice, "What are you talking about? I don't dare to provoke that princess you." Princess Zhonglu raised her nose and said proudly, "You don't have to worry about this. You don't dare to provoke her, but I'm going to teach her a good lesson and make her understand some things. I'm in charge of all the affairs around you, and as your concubine, she has to listen to my instructions obediently. If she's obedient, I'll feed her with luxurious clothes and delicious food. If she's not obedient, I'll drag her out and beat her to death with a stick. But Zixian, if you marry me, will you still help me choose concubines? Wuqi asked in astonishment. Princess Zhongli looked at Wuqi in astonishment, frowned and said, "Is that so strange? Every year, Grandpa Emperor takes in dozens of new concubines to give birth to offspring. Every year, Father also takes in nearly 100 new concubines. Even old Mr. Suqin has brought back a few singing girls from the pleasure boat in Myriad Red River, and made them his concubines. Su Mai is the son of old Mr. Suqin's concubine 30 years ago." Looking at Wu Qi with a puzzled expression, Princess Zhongli said, "As a man of great yen, it is my duty to bring in more offspring for the clan. Otherwise, how can a clan grow stronger? With your current status and identity, if you marry Zixian, out of all the palace maids serving Zixian, there should be 108 of them who will become your concubines at the same time. After that, every year, you will have to take in at least 12 new concubines as your concubines. Only by doing that, you will be able to expand the strength of Great Yin Dynasty." Princess Zhongli said with a serious expression. "Grandpa Emperor has been teaching us that in this world, the power of the clan is the most reliable. If we don't produce more offspring, how can we gain a foothold in this world?" Wu Qi fell silent. He couldn't tell what he was feeling, but he put his arms around Princess Zhongli's waist. Yes, he had neglected the reality of this world, and applied the principles that he was accustomed to on Earth to Princess Zhongli. If they were on Earth, if a noble like Princess Zhongli were to marry someone, how could she tolerate her husband fooling around outside? Wouldn't that cause a great chaos in the world? But in this world, the domineering and ignorant Princess Zhongli was wholeheartedly thinking for the love of her life, even taking into consideration how many new concubines she was going to marry in the future. This world. Wu Qi thought to himself. If Xiaobai could come here, I bet he would be so touched that he would burst into tears. This place is simply the paradise that he has been dreaming of. Standing on top of the wall, Princess Zhongli was calculating all these with her fingers, yet it had infuriated Xiangyu down below. He thrust his coiling dragon spear into the air like a madman, and kept unleashing unreserved attacks towards Meng Fortress. He transformed into a clump of blood-red flame, slamming and slamming into the defensive barrier of Meng Fortress with a jarring noise of wind breaking. Again and again. Every time he slammed into the barrier, he would not hold back, as he had fused all his spirit, energy, and soul into the coiling dragon spear in his hand. Every time he slammed into the barrier, it was as heavy as Mount Tai, but he failed to achieve anything. The defensive barrier of Meng Fortress was formed from several tens of thousands of cultivators of Great Yin Dynasty, an enormous amount of energy stones, dozens of underground energy veins, and an enormous amount of natural energy. How could Xiangyu possibly break through it alone? Every time he slammed into the barrier, he would be bounced back by the barrier, and every time he would be sent flying over 100 miles away. But every time, Xiangyu would roar furiously and thrust his spear forward, transforming into a blood-red beam and slamming back fiercely. He had fused all his willpower, all his strength, and all his spirit, energy, and soul into the spear in his hand. He thrust the spear forward, then thrust it forward again, and thrust it forward again. Loud popping noises rang out as his body slammed into the defensive barrier, causing the barrier to flicker and flicker violently, and causing numerous bloody wounds to gradually open up on his body, while a large amount of blood kept spraying out from them. Xiangyu, who had nearly turned his nascent divinity into a flame, howled hoarsely, "Wu Qi, you little thief! Come out and fight me to death! Wu Qi, you little thief! Come out and fight me to death! Yin Dan, get your ass out here right now! If you don't hand over this little thief, Great Chu and Great Yin will fight to the death!" Clang! A loud clanging noise echoed out. Finally, the coiling dragon spear in Xiangyu's hand could no longer withstand the crazy impact, and suddenly broke apart. The skin and flesh of Xiangyu's hands were torn by the explosion of the coiling dragon spear, exposing the pale white bones underneath with a faint golden gleam. After losing the spear, Xiangyu's body slammed straight into the defensive barrier. Several hundred defensive thunderbolts, each as thick as a water bucket, came whistling down from the sky and smashed onto his body, smashing his armor and ripping it off. His body, which was already riddled with countless bloody wounds, was now covered with even more blood and flesh. It was a horrible sight to behold. Wuxia hugged Princess Zhongli's waist tightly, fixing his eyes on Xiangyu, who was badly beaten by the defensive barrier. Yuji, why did you come to me for no reason? Are you trying to kill Xiangyu? On the other side, Princess Zhongli clapped her hands lightly and said with a joyful smile, "What a brainless fellow. If he is dead, then so be it. Now that he is dead, Grandpa can mobilize the army and wipe out all 80,000 elite soldiers of his. At the same time, we can get rid of a formidable enemy for Great Yan. Sigh, this consort can't wait to see exactly what that Yuji looks like." Wu Qi patted Princess Zhongli's head, sighed and said in a low voice, "This Xiangyu is also a hero. Don't provoke him with words anymore." Princess Zhongli twitched her lips, shook her head disdainfully and said, "Hero? I really can't tell how he looks like a hero. Impulsive, overconfident, and self-righteous. He is just like Xiongqing and the other big bears. That woman actually raped you. She is obviously not a good woman. For the sake of a bad woman, he charged into the territory of the enemy alone to seek revenge. What a stupid man." Stupid? Wu Qi thought back to the hegemon king of Western Chu in the history, and he could not help but sigh. This hegemon king was indeed not that smart. With a loud cracking sound, Xiangyu's right fist smashed heavily on the defensive barrier of the city. Hundreds of huge runes flashed and flashed on the wall, and the tremendous force of the impact shattered the bones of Xiangyu's right arm. His right arm was twisted in an abnormal way, and it was obvious that the bones inside had turned into a mess. However, Xiangyu did not feel it at all. He kept swinging his limp arm and slammed it heavily onto the barrier in front of him. Princess Zhongli's face froze slightly. Xiangyu, who was covered in blood and looked like a crazy devil, was starting to scare her. Wu Qi frowned as well. He slightly exercised the mystic eyes of universe and glanced at Xiangyu. This was not normal, very abnormal. It was only natural that Xiangyu would want to vent his anger by killing him. But he was so angry that he did not even notice that his body was injured. This was not just because he was angry, but something else must have happened to him. Using the mystic eyes of universe, Wu Qi could vaguely see a tall and burly celestial fiend hovering behind Xiangyu. Countless tiny threads of light were being emitted from the blood-red celestial fiend, piercing deep into Xiangyu's body. Streams of blood-red spiritual attacks, which Wu Qi could barely see, were attacking Xiangyu's nascent divinity, which was on the verge of collapsing in his spiritual ocean. There was not a single drop of blood left in Xiangyu's body, as all his blood had been transformed into a sticky blood-red flame and burned away. It was causing his body to go through some bizarre transformation, which was very similar to the transformation that happened to Wu Qi when he was cultivating the dragon transformation script. In Wu Qi's mystic eyes of universe, as the blood-red flame burned Xiangyu's body, his bones were gradually transforming into a translucent blood-red crystal, while his muscles and meridians were turning into an evil and demonic purple-black color. A huge blood-red cloud wrapped around a blood-red flag was rolling and rolling rapidly inside Xiangyu's body, accelerating the overall transformation of his fleshly body. Devilization. Xiangyu's body was quickly transforming into a fiend. There were several tens of thousands of rare and precious spirit items recorded in the Scroll of Stealing, and one of them was called the Thousand Tribulation Dragon Blood Fiend Fruit, which had the effect of transforming the body of a cultivator into the body of an ancient celestial fiend. Once the cultivator transformed into the body of an ancient celestial fiend, no blade or axe could hurt him. Even if it was only a small piece of broken body, as long as there was still a thread of broken soul left, the cultivator would be able to absorb the natural energies and be reborn. Indestructible and immortal celestial fiend body. This was the strongest effect of the body of an ancient celestial fiend. Xiangyu's body was gradually going through this bizarre transformation. But obviously, this transformation was not under his control. It was as if his body was being possessed by someone. While his fleshly body was undergoing the transformation, His nascent divinity was also being attacked violently. The blood-red celestial fiend behind him seemed to be seizing the control of his body. What kind of damned cultivation technique is this guy cultivating? How could he cultivate a second nascent divinity in his body that can devour the owner's second nascent divinity? Wuxia shook his head and murmured in confusion. However, he just murmured to himself, as he was too lazy to find out what was going on. Suddenly, a beam of starlight shot up into the sky from the top of his head. It was the heavenly star positioning disc, the most precious treasure of heavenly spirit sect, flying up slowly from the top of Wuqi's head. Zixian Xiongjin, Xiongyin Xiongqing. All of you, lend me a hand. Wuqi pointed at the ancient jade disc that was spinning slowly above his head, smiled wryly and said, "This thing has a great offensive strength, but it consumes a lot of energy as well. With your energy, let me see if I can give Xiangyu a good beating." Princess Zhonglu stared at the heavenly star positioning disc in surprise. She smiled and said, "It is true that you killed the people of Heavenly Spirit Sect and robbed their most precious treasure. Hee, this treasure is mine now, and no one can take it back and give it back to those bastards from Heavenly Spirit Sect. I, Baizhuer, quickly remember that there is a Heavenly Star positioning disc in my private storage. If it goes missing in the future, find Heavenly Spirit Sect and give it a hard time. They must be the ones who stole it." Beaming with joy, Princess Zhonglu flipped her palm and sent a stream of pure energy into the Heavenly Star positioning disc. The Xiong brothers, Xiongqing brothers, and the rest of the demon bears were roaring and sending their energy into the Heavenly Star positioning disc. Suddenly, the enormous Heavenly Star positioning disc shone with a layer of several tens of feet thick silver starlight. Amidst a deep rumble of thunder, the jade disc began to spin quickly. With his divine will, Wuqi controlled the Heavenly Star positioning disc, slowly guiding the energy of Princess Zhonglu and the others into the restrictive spell in the disc. Both of his hands were quickly forming incantation gestures, controlling the specks of starlight that suddenly appeared on the disc, locking Xiangyu's body tightly. There was a group of cultivators from Heavenly Spirit Sect who were helping to defend the Meng Fortress. When they saw Wuqi suddenly taking out the most precious treasure of their sect, they cried out in alarm. These cultivators from Heavenly Spirit Sect were staring at Wuqi with an unfriendly gaze. All the grudges between him and Heavenly Spirit Sect suddenly emerged in their minds. Wuqi did not have the time to pay any attention to these people from Heavenly Spirit Sect. He pointed his finger out casually. A silver beam as thick as a water tank shot out from the Heavenly Star positioning disc and hit Xiangyu's chest. Xiangyu gave a miserable howl as he was knocked flying away by the silver beam. Chapter 240. The silver beam brought Xiangyu's body and pierced through over 30 lofty mountains, leaving behind several tens of feet wide holes on top of them. It continued until Xiangyu was over 100 miles away, and only then did the silver beam gradually dissipate. The skin and flesh of Xiangyu's upper body had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a translucent skeleton that had turned pale black, and some remaining internal organs, blood vessels, and meridians. The starlight shot out from the Heavenly Star positioning disc was rubbing against the air at a high speed, triggering a great amount of heat. Xiangyu's skeleton was boiling hot, and white smoke kept rising and rising from it. All the skin and flesh on his head, including both of his eyeballs, had turned into nothingness because of the high temperature. The pale black skull stared fixedly at the direction of Meng Fortress, then suddenly opened its mouth and let out a soundless roar that rang out directly in the souls of all the people. The furious roar immediately made over 10,000 cultivators, with the weakest cultivation base in Meng Fortress, fall to the ground while coughing blood. Their souls had suffered a great impact, and a few of them even had their 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls shaken out of their bodies, nearly being wiped out by the sunlight and the strong wind. Suddenly, countless tiny blood vessels grew out from Xiangyu's pale black skeleton. The densely packed blood vessels were twisting and struggling, quickly reconstructing his internal organs and muscles. Amidst a series of sizzling noises, thick layers of muscles quickly covered Xiangyu's skeleton, while his meridians and blood vessels were gradually spreading out from his muscles. His newly regenerated muscles, blood vessels, and meridians were now glinting with a dark purple gleam, glinting with a metallic gleam. The natural energies within the circumference of 1,000 miles began to surge and roll towards Xiangyu, while his body was like a black hole that kept devouring an enormous amount of natural energies. At the same time, Xiangyu's body was transforming the natural energies at an incredible speed, forming new blood, flesh, and internal organs. His newly regenerated heart was pounding vigorously like a war drum, shaking the surrounding air and producing loud banging noises, while the ground was shaking violently along with his heartbeat. On top of the city wall, Wuxia gasped, then grinned and said, "Is he still a human?" Princess Zhongli stared in astonishment at Xiangyu, whose body was transforming like a ghost about 100 miles away. A 5-colored divine ray burst out from her back, as she pointed both of her hands at Xiangyu and cried out, "All living beings under the heaven, follow my will." Deification? Soul-locking curse. Following Princess Zhongli's rebuke, a power similar to the power of laws spread out from her body, giving Wuqi, who was standing beside her, a fright. He looked at Princess Zhongli with astonishment. His soul consciousness quickly covered her body, sensing the strange energy fluctuations emitted from her body. It was a very mysterious power that pointed directly to the rules of heaven and earth. It was similar to Li Si's Dharma word and Su Fu's primordial runes Tao. However, it was closer to the original power of this world, a more primitive and ancient power. This kind of power made Wuqi frown, as it was very similar to the power of the primordial runes recorded in the Book of Ancient God, which he found in the Scroll of Stealing. Ancient, primordial, filled with an awe-inspiring aura that no one dared to offend. It was a pity that Princess Zhongli's cultivation was too weak. She was unable to unleash the true might of this power, but it was already frightening enough. Near the center of Princess Zhongli's brows, there was a faint spirit light that was faintly visible. If not for Wuqi's mystic eyes of universe, which allowed him to see things that ordinary cultivators could not, he would not have been able to discover the existence of this spirit light. Through this spirit light, the energy of Princess Zhongli's divine sense was transformed into the strange power, quickly spreading to an area of 100 miles in circumference. The surrounding heaven and earth suddenly fell into a dead silence. Like a bug trapped in amber, everything within an area of 300 miles was completely frozen by a strange power. Time, space, the circulation of natural energies, the movement of all people, the vibration of all the tiny particles, everything seemed to have paused for a brief moment. At that moment, even Wuqi's divine sense went blank, as he could not understand what was happening. Princess Zhongli performed an incantation gesture with her slender fingers, pointed at Xiangyu and said feebly, "Go." The strange power that covered an area of 300 miles suddenly compressed inwardly, condensing into a sesame-sized speck of light on the tip of Princess Zhongli's finger, flashing with a 5-colored divine light. As Princess Zhongli let out a soft cry, the tiny speck of light transformed into a beam of light, pierced through the void of 100 miles in a blink of an eye, and lightly imprinted itself on Xiangyu's forehead. Suddenly, Xiangyu's body, which was crazily devouring natural energies, froze. The connection between his body and the outside world was completely sealed. No matter how his muscles kept squirming, his heart was beating crazily, and the vague shadow of a blood-red fiend behind him kept roaring and leaping. He could not absorb any more natural energies. His body, which had just been mostly repaired, froze again. His purplish-black muscles were squirming crazily, but no new muscles were growing. Was so tired. Princess Zhongli, who had unleashed her mighty power and sealed off the connection between Xiangyu and the natural energies in the outside world with a magical sealing technique, had her body slanted to one side. Cold sweat was breaking out from her body like tiny streams, and in just a blink of an eye, her palace dress was soaked through. Princess Zhongli rolled her eyes, made a few gurgling noises, and fell to the ground on her back. Wuqi quickly held Princess Zhongli and placed his palms on her back. A large amount of pure energy kept rushing out of his palms and into Princess Zhongli's body. It was easy for Wuqi to obtain his blood essence and energy. Therefore, he never attached much importance to these blood essence and energy, which were considered as precious as their lives by other cultivators. He circulated his energy and blood, constantly supplying his own blood essence and energy to Princess Zhonglu. Princess Zhonglu, whose face was so pale that it looked almost translucent, breathed a heavy sigh of relief, and her face suddenly regained its rosy color. Looking at Wuxia with surprise, Princess Zhonglu said happily, "I knew it, Wuxia. You're the one who loves Zhonglu the most and loves Zhonglu the most. Under the heaven, you're the only one who would give Zhonglu your own blood essence like this." Her face suddenly blushed, and Princess Zhonglu said bashfully in a low voice, "I think I'd better not waste my blood essence and energy. It's not good for a man's body. If he loses his energy essence, he won't be able to give birth to a baby in the future." Wu Qi's heart raced a few times, and he nearly coughed out a mouthful of blood. He looked at Princess Zhonglu helplessly. What was she thinking? What kind of family education did the princesses of Great Yin Dynasty receive? Although they knew nothing about the ways of the world, yet they were able to find concubines for their husbands. Before they were married, they were already concerned about the body of their lover, fearing that they wouldn't be able to give birth to a baby in the future. Wu Qi's face twisted. With a bitter smile on his face, he said, "Don't worry, I have a lot of blood essence of dragon essence, which can replenish my energy. The mystic technique you used just now has consumed too much of your energy, and it's time for you to replenish it." How did you learn the spirit locking spell? Ugh. Princess Zhonglu stared at Wu Qi with a blank expression. She tilted her head, frowned and said, "Nobody taught me. This is strange. How did I learn it? It seems like I've learned it since I was young, but I can only use it after I formed the Jin Dan. There are many other spells, but I can't use them." A term suddenly emerged in Wu Qi's mind: bloodline inheritance. It was a bloodline inheritance power that could only be found in some extremely powerful divine beasts or immortal beasts. He had never thought that Princess Zhonglu could inherit such an unimaginable mystic technique from her bloodline. Perhaps this was the divine ability inherited from her mother's bloodline? Judging from the looks of Yan Dan and Yan Qijuan, it did not look like they had inherited any divine ability from their bloodline. Was Xiang Yu's body conferred as a deity? When hit by the spirit locking spell, not only could he not absorb any natural energy from the outside world, even his mobility was temporarily sealed. His muscles were twitching violently like a tightened steel wire, producing loud cracking noises. However, no matter how hard he struggled, it was as if his body had lost the ability to move. Xiang Yu threw his head back and let out a furious roar. Blood-red beams shot out from his eyes, reaching a distance of a few miles. He glared angrily at Wu Qi and Princess Zhonglu, who were cuddling and flirting with each other on top of the city wall, and roared, "Wu Qi, you little punk! Fight me to the death! Wu Qi, you little punk, you and I!" Puff! Xiang Yu, who had flown into a rage and did not pay any attention to what was happening around him, suddenly shot out a pink sword beam from his chest. The sword pierced through his heart, causing a large amount of burning blood to spray out from his chest like lava, then shot out hundreds of feet away along with the pink sword beam that carried a boundlessly charming aura. After that, 6 white shadows came striking down from the sky like thunderbolts, smashing heavily onto Xiang Yu's body and cracking his bones one after another, producing ear-splitting cracking noises. With his good eyesight, Wu Qi could see that the 6 white shadows were actually 6 fox tails, each about 7 to 8 miles long and covered in white fur. He could not see the actual body of the fox tails. Only the 6 white tails kept smashing at Xiang Yu, making him howl and howl miserably. Yet he did not even have the strength to fight back. Not allowing Xiang Yu to break free from the deification spell? Under the restraint of the spirit locking spell, a huge black palm suddenly appeared above his head. A loud rumble rang out. The rock layer under Xiang Yu's feet, about a mile in circumference, was lifted up by the same giant black palm. Then the 2 giant palms slammed inwards, turning the rock layer, which was about 1,000 feet thick, into nothingness. Xiang Yu's bones were broken in an instant. Then, the 2 huge palms were tossed toward Xiang Yu. A white shadow flashed across the sky, and a strange-shaped pair of scissors pierced through Xiang Yu's chest, shattering a row of his ribs. A heart the size of a toddler's head was cut off by the pair of scissors, accompanied by a large amount of blood. Then it was taken out of Xiang Yu's body by the white light. Suddenly, a beam of strong golden light emerged, as the demon king Jin Jia, whose body had expanded to 30 feet tall, appeared behind Xiang Yu. His body was densely covered with golden scales, and he was holding a square golden hammer that looked like a heavy hammer used by blacksmiths. He let out a long and sonorous cry, swinging the hammer like a whirlwind and smashing it toward Xiang Yu's face. Clang! 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 A series of loud clanging noises rang out. Dark purple blood and flesh splattered everywhere from Xiang Yu's body, and more than half of his black bones were broken. Finally, a shrill cry rang out, as a greenish aura of death came shooting down from the sky and enveloped Xiang Yu entirely. A fat, pitch-black bald owl was seen hovering in midair. Its body was fully covered in black feathers, and there was not even a single hair growing on its buttocks, exposing more than half of its white buttocks. It opened its mouth and let out a hoarse cry, spraying out a huge amount of rotting bones and soul-devouring energy, crazily corroding Xiang Yu's corporeal body. The 5 imperial advisors of Great Yan Dynasty and the 5 demon kings of Meng Mountains had joined forces and severely wounded Xiang Yu on the spot. From afar, Wuxia looked at Xiang Yu, who was enveloped by the soul-devouring energy, and breathed out a heavy sigh. You deserve to die, don't you? Princess Zhonglu assumed the posture of the first wife and said with a serious expression, "It's better that you're dead. I want to see if that Yu Ji is still beautiful, and if she is a good match for you. If she is beautiful, I'll take her as my wife." Not only Princess Zhonglu had the same thought. Even Bai Zhu and Bai Zuer, who stood next to her, were nodding their heads in agreement. Immediately, cold sweat broke out from Wu Qi's forehead. Chapter 241. Deep in Meng Mountains, on a small hill surrounded by green water, Ying Zheng and Gi Gazi were playing chess under a big tree. Black and white chess pieces were placed on the chessboard. Ying Zheng was playing black, and his chess moves were awe-inspiring. Vaguely, he was emanating a domineering aura, and every time he placed a chess piece, he would attack the spot where the opponent had no choice but to save. His killing intent was fully exposed from the black chess pieces. Gi Gazi was playing white, but his chess moves were indescribable. Sometimes it was erratic, sometimes it was filled with murderous intent, sometimes it was profound and simple, and sometimes it was simple and naive. His chess moves even gave one a feeling of disorder. But, amidst these random attacks, Ying Zheng's domineering chess strategy was twisted into a mess and out of order. Shaking his head with a slight headache, Ying Zheng shamelessly smashed the black and white chess pieces on the chessboard. He laughed dryly and said, "Old mister, you have an unfathomable ability, and you know the secrets of the heaven. I'm just a mortal, and I can't be compared with a deity." Gi Gazi picked up a cup of tea placed on the side of the chessboard, sipped it, then shook his head, sighed and said, "Emperor Qin is indeed Emperor Qin. His ability to flatter people is just a little weaker than others. Hee. I dare not call myself a deity, but under the heaven, there are only 2 people in Great Yan who can fight against me." Ying Zheng's face turned stiff. "Mod Sun Kuang. Can they be used by Daqin?" Gi Gazi gave Ying Zheng a surprised look. Ying Zheng blushed, bowed his head and admitted his mistake. "I was wrong. Mod, the ancestor of Mo clan, and Sun Kuang, the widely acknowledged sage under the heaven. Since they have acknowledged me as their master, naturally, I can't use them. What a pity. Why are they not in the territory of Daqin? Yen Dan has taken advantage of this." He sighed, then frowned and said, "So with both of them holding you back, I'm afraid you can't act rashly, old mister?" Gi Gazi nodded and said, "Yes. Mod Sun Kuang and I have come to an agreement. Unless we are facing someone else, when Daqin and Great Yan are fighting, we will not fight each other. Mod and Sun Kuang's cultivation base is not weaker than mine. Mod is an expert in mechanisms, while Sun Kuang is an expert in spells. Although I'm an expert in the Tao of formations and runes, the 2 of them are still stronger than me. Instead of wasting our energy, why don't the 3 of us stop?" Ying Zheng nodded slowly, then turned to look at Yu Yao, who was brewing tea with a sweet smile on her face. A gentle smile emerged on Zheng's stiff face as he said, "Sister, why do you need to do these trivial things yourself?" Yu Yao smiled faintly and poured a new cup of tea for Zheng and Gigazi. After that, she raised her sleeve and wiped off the beads of sweat on her forehead. "We haven't seen each other for over 2,000 years, and I really have no idea how you managed to survive all alone. How can I be at ease leaving these matters to others?" The two of them looked at each other and smiled. Unconsciously, their hands clasped together. Yu Yao fell into Zheng's arms. Both of them looked at each other affectionately, and for a moment, they forgot about everything under the heaven. Standing next to them, Gigazi shook his head, picked up the teacup and took a sip slowly. Then he rose to his feet and looked into the southeast direction of the mountain range. The Empress has struck right at Xiangyu's weak point. Perhaps, the furious Xiangyu has already found his way to Great Yan's army. This is the perfect opportunity for Daqin to destroy the mighty army of Xiangyu. We must wipe them all out, and not let a single one of them escape. A cold gleam flickered in the eyes of Zheng and Yu Yao, and the warm feeling between them vanished in an instant. Zheng rose to his feet, looked coldly into the direction of the mountain range, and said coldly, "I suppose the few generals have already struck, haven't they? Xiangyu has left the army and gone out on his own. How can a man like him claim to be a hegemon? Among all the heroes under the heaven, how can a boorish man like him have the chance?" Yu Yao said coolly, "Since Xiangyu has left the camp alone, let's go to the battlefield and take charge. Although Xiangyu has left the army, the few generals under him are not so easy to deal with. Yu Yao has abandoned the over 2,000 years of sisterhood with Yu Ji, and used such a trick on Xiangyu. Since she has done it, we can't spare a single soldier of Xiangyu's army." The three men laughed together, then turned into bright beams and shot towards the direction of the mountain range. Vaguely they heard Gigazi ask in a low voice, "But there is one thing that I don't understand. I've studied the heaven's secrets, and I have some understanding of the Tao of heaven and earth. But I can't understand why Yu Ji, as Xiangyu's beloved concubine, would do such a thing with that little boy? It doesn't make any sense." Yu Yao's chuckle came from afar. "Old mister, you are a knowledgeable man. In your eyes, the Tao of heaven and earth is like reading the lines on your palm, and there is nothing you cannot understand. But old mister, you do not understand women at all. The changes in the mind of a woman are millions and millions of times more complicated than the Tao of heaven and earth." Gigazi's desire to learn was aroused, and he asked hastily, "I'd like to hear the details." Three bright beams sped away, flying towards a lofty mountain range that was shrouded in mist and clouds in the southeast direction. Between the towering mountain ridges, the dense forest had been completely cut down. Tens of thousands of practitioners of Qin army, clad in black robes and tall hats, were hovering in midair. Each of them was surrounded by 1 to 9 layers of glowing runes, each of them surrounded by blinking runes. The forest, measuring 100 miles in both width and length, was completely cut down, and a huge formation, measuring 100 miles in circumference, was drawn on the ground. Several tens of thousands of pieces of spatial breaching spirit gold of different sizes were glinting with a blinding light, as they were inlaid on various key parts of the formation. From time to time, bright lights would flash and flash from the formation, as large groups of burly men, clad in black armors and holding long blades in their hands, their eyes gleaming fiercely, strode out from the formation. Although the spatial breaching spirit gold could greatly reduce the consumption of energy stones, it was obvious that the territory of Daqin was too far away from Meng Mountains. However, it was obvious that the territory of Daqin was too far away from Meng Mountains, and the number of people needed to be teleported was too great. Every time the formation flickered, more than 100,000 burly armored soldiers would walk out from the formation. Every time the formation was teleported, the energy of all the energy stones in the formation would be completely depleted. Therefore, all the practitioners kept themselves busy. Once the energy of the energy stones was depleted, they would immediately replace it with another batch of energy stones. In just 15 minutes, the number of upper-grade and middle-grade energy stones had exceeded 5 million. Such a huge consumption of energy stones made Li Si and Su Fu, who were standing on top of clouds and supervising the operation, turned pale. When another batch of armored soldiers walked out from the formation, Li Si, whose face was twisted, could not help but turn his head and look at a handsome man standing next to him, clad in a long robe of a civil official with a heavy armor underneath. He said, "General Zhang, it should be about time, right? During these 7 days, the number of condemned prisoners, felons, ruffians, and scoundrels who were transferred here from Daqin's territory has exceeded 5 million. Standing next to him, Su Fu also chimed in. "I, Su Fu, do not know much about military formations, but I do know that when there are more than 10,000 soldiers, there will be no end. If these 5 million condemned prisoners, felons, ruffians, and scoundrels are to spread out in this mountain ridge, they will occupy an area of several hundred miles in circumference. General Zhang, there is no way to spread out this army." The handsome man smiled, shook his head and said, "Don't worry. Once they are smashed into meat paste by the mighty army of Xiang Chu, they will be able to spread out. If these people stay in Daqin's territory, even if they are forced to serve as laborers, it will just be a waste of rice and food. It is better to kill them all at once, and at the same time, they can make a contribution to Daqin. The 80,000 mighty soldiers of Xiang Chu are all human immortals of Jin Dan. The 80,000 demon beasts pulling the chariots are all demon immortals who have formed their demon cores. Wiping out these 80,000 elite soldiers will be a heavy blow to Great Chu. In the future, Great Chu will be the strongest enemy of Daqin. If we can weaken them, we will." With just a few words, he had decided the fate of these 5 million condemned prisoners and felons. There was no killing intent in the words of this handsome man. It was as if he was an uncle from next door who was chatting idly with his family. Yet it made one shudder with fear, and made one want to stay as far away from him as possible. On top of a mountain not far away, Baichi and a few generals of Qin army were squatting on the ground, tossing dice in boredom. However, the dice they tossed were not engraved with the usual numbers. Instead, they were engraved with some tiny words, such as focus on the east, take the initiative to attack the west, guard the rear army, lead the army in guerrilla warfare, and others. After tossing a few dice, Wang Jian suddenly rose to his feet angrily. He stared at the black-clothed man in the distance and said with a cold grin, "Zhang Han, you little punk. This is the same old trick he used many years ago, using the condemned prisoners and felons to put their lives on the line. Humph. What does this mean to the elite soldiers of Daqin?" Squatting on the ground, Baichi picked up a handful of dice and tossed them randomly. All right, he said coolly. "It is a good thing that fewer elite soldiers will die. Let Zhang Han lead those bastards who are worse than pigs and dogs, and consume some of the strength of these mighty Chu soldiers. Once these 5 million lowly bastards are all dead, we'll lead our elite soldiers and attack. We'll definitely kill all 80,000 elite soldiers of Chu." Stretching his back, Baichi sneered and said, "What a pity. For the sake of a woman, that idiot Xiang Yu actually challenged the front line of Yan army alone. What an idiot. A woman is nothing to him." He rose to his feet and stomped his feet forcefully. Baichi shook his head and said, "A woman? I have several tens of thousands of concubines in my mansion, and yet for the sake of a woman, he dares to charge into the front line alone. Can he be considered as a hegemon? What an idiot." All the generals of Qin army roared with laughter at the same time. Only Wang Jian was looking thoughtfully at the southeast direction. He murmured under his breath, "Xiang Yu is an idiot? Perhaps. But he does have quite a number of strategists and excellent generals around him." Mr. Gigazi had learned that we were in danger in Meng Mountains through the art of turtle divination, and he had brought a great amount of energy stones and formation items to come to our rescue. That was why he had allowed us to construct the teleportation formation and keep receiving reinforcements from Daqin's territory. Great Chu places great importance on the art of shaman and ghost divination. I don't think they don't have any experts like that, right? Everyone frowned. Bai Qitian suddenly laughed and said, "Could it be that General Wang Li is still thinking about how you were captured alive by Xiang Yu years ago?" Wang Li's face turned extremely unsightly, while Wang Jian and Wang Ben snorted at the same time. Chuckling, Baichi moved his body sideways and stood in front of Bai Qitian. All the other generals of Qin army moved their bodies at the same time, and in an instant, they were divided into 3 distinct groups. They were led by Baiqi, Wang Jian, and another general, who had a gaunt face, sunken eyes, and a tall nose. While the 3 groups of Qin generals were glaring at each other furiously, and were about to argue with each other, Zhang Han suddenly gave out an order from afar. A loud roar that sounded like a muffled thunderclap echoed out from the ground. From the surrounding mountain ridges, countless soldiers clad in black armors roared and roared, holding all kinds of weapons in their hands and charging towards the southeast direction without any formation. It was as if a group of evil ghosts had rushed out from hell, or as if a swarm of locusts had blotted the sky and covered the earth. In just a blink of an eye, several million armored soldiers had turned the mountain ridges several hundred miles in circumference black. While howling and howling, they charged forward at top speed while emanating a towering murderous aura. Up in the sky, Zhang Han was leading several hundred captains, shouting at the top of his voice, "Those who killed 1 Xiangchu soldier will be absolved of their crime. Those who killed 2 Xiangchu soldiers will be conferred a title of nobility. Those who killed 3 Xiangchu soldiers will have their families conferred a title of nobility. Those who killed one of the generals of Xiangchu soldiers will be conferred a title of nobility. Their land will be ceded, and they will be rewarded with 1 million gold coins and 1,000 beautiful girls." Zhang Han raised both hands up into the air and roared fiercely, "You are lowly bastards who are worse than pigs and dogs. You are a dead breed who are struggling for your lives in slavery. If you want to become someone superior, if you want to enjoy wealth and glory, this is your best chance. Gold, silver, jewelry, and beautiful girls are all waiting for you to enjoy. Kill, kill, kill." Ha ha ha. Millions of Daqin felons and condemned prisoners roared and roared at the same time. Suddenly, a strong blood-red gleam burst out from their eyes. Chapter 242. Amidst the mountain ridges, 80,000 elite soldiers of Xiang clan were building a city on a flat dam that measured nearly 1,000 miles in circumference. Some of the soldiers were exercising, some were cultivating, and some were bringing the single-horned rhinoceros demon beasts that pulled the chariots, washing these powerful rhinoceros demon beasts by a small river in the dam. The mighty soldiers of Xiang clan dug the soil and built the city. The city measured 30 miles in circumference, and there was a very tall watchtower in the middle of the city, which was also built using soil and stone. On the watchtower, which stood 1,500 feet tall, and measured 20 feet in both width and length, 2 generals, Xiang Ta and Xiang Zhuang, were seen standing angrily on the watchtower, their eyes staring straight into the distance. Their eyes were dull and unfocused, and no one could tell what they were thinking about. After a full 15 minutes, Xiang Ta asked in a low voice, "Second father is not here. What should we do?" Xiang Zhuang gave Xiang Ta a fierce glare, then scolded in a low voice, "I only know how to kill people. Don't ask me about things that require brains. Second father is not here, but didn't we send a letter? But all the women under the heaven are unreliable. The one who angered the king and left the camp alone when she just came back, and the 2 who brought the men here, they are all unreliable. Bah, if a bunch of women were to come together, we would all die here." Xiang Ta was shocked and said, "I don't think so. You and I are cultivating the Qiyu Undying Fiend technique, and the celestial fiend energy in all 360 acupoints has condensed into fiend energy pearls. Our overall strength is comparable to a cultivator who has formed his nascent divinity. It is not so easy for them to kill us." Xiang Zhuang spat a mouthful of phlegm onto the ground and growled impatiently in a low voice. "So what if he's powerful? Where is the king? The king is gone. Without the king, the morale and combat strength of the mighty soldiers of Xiang clan will drop by at least 50%. Without the banner of Qiyu, our undying fiend technique, that has yet to attain mastery, can only bring out 30% of its fiend energy. You and I are only comparable to a peak-stage nascent soul cultivator. What's the point of fighting?" While both of them were discussing, Yu Ji, who was clad in a black robe, Yu Tan, who was clad in a snow-white robe, and 2 other women who were clad in palace dresses, had green hair that fluttered like clouds, and had exquisite and beautiful facial features. They were exuding a strong aura of nature, making them look like wild spirits of the mountains. Both Yu Ji and Yu Tan were dressed very simply, but the palace dresses worn by the two ladies were extremely luxurious. Their black palace dresses were fully embroidered with various beautiful patterns, and they were adorned with several dozens of exquisite jade pendants, and other ornaments. These jade pendants and jade discs were faintly glowing, and there were runes circulating within them. It was clear that they were extremely powerful magic tools, and not just decorative items. The two women's eyes were a magnificent dark green and deep purple, and their lips were a faint dark red. Their beautiful appearances gave off an extremely bewitching and gorgeous feeling. They were followed by several dozens of ladies, all wearing tall crowns on their heads and black robes. The exposed skin on their faces and hands was densely covered with black tattoos. Those tattoos were not ordinary venomous insects or fierce beasts, but tiny and dense ancient runes. They looked like countless worms that were wriggling and crawling under the fair skin of these ladies, as if they were living creatures. Upon seeing this group of ladies walk out, Xiang Zhuang's expression flickered. He spat out a mouthful of saliva, and was about to spit it towards the heads of these ladies. Fortunately, Xiang Ta was fast enough to grab Xiang Zhuang and push him a few steps back. Pooh! Xiang Zhuang spat his saliva onto the watchtower, shaking it so much that a few cracks appeared on the soil and rocks on the platform. Although Xiang Ta had stopped him from spitting, Xiang Zhuang still struggled relentlessly, cursing at Yu Ji, Yu Tan and the other ladies. Wicked girls, you are the source of the so-called calamity. Damn it, you are going to let all 80,000 of our men die here. A bunch of bastards. You can only be played by men in bed. How can you be the one commanding the army? Yu Ji and Yu Tan smiled with a straight face, while the two ladies clad in palace dresses frowned slightly and sighed lightly. One of them raised her right hand and showed him a commander's seal carved into the shape of a tiger. General Xiang Zhuang, here is the commander's seal. If you refuse to obey our orders, don't blame us for being merciless with the military law. With General Xiang Zhuang's cultivation base, you will die on the spot even if I chop your head off 30 to 50 times, don't you think? Xiang Zhuang threw his head back and gave a furious roar into the sky. Then he stepped on a blood cloud and soared into the sky, flying towards the small river that was washing the single-horned rhinoceros in the distance. The lady holding the commander's seal sighed helplessly, then turned to the other lady clad in a palace dress and said in a low voice, "Elder sister, what do you think?" The lady shook her head silently, then bowed to Yu Ji and Yu Tan and said, "Qi Bin and Lu Mei, please excuse us, elder sisters. The mighty soldiers of Xiang clan are arrogant and unruly, and this is a well-known fact in Great Chu. This time we still need elder sisters to help Qi Bin and Lu Mei to suppress them, or else something bad will happen." Yu Ji and Yu Tan exchanged a glance, then Chi nodded his head and said, "We'll obey your orders." While the few ladies were discussing in low voices, suddenly, war cries that sounded like muffled thunders were heard coming from all directions. Towering murderous auras came bursting out from all directions. From afar, one could see armored soldiers of Daqin, clad in black armors, pouring down from the mountain ridges in all directions like a tidal wave. Among these armored soldiers of Daqin, more than 80% of them had the cultivation base of Hotian warriors, and more than 10% had the overall strength of Xiantian Daoist. Then there were only about 7,000 Jin Dan cultivators, and over 50 nascent soul cultivators. The law of Daqin was very strict. Those who violated the law would be arrested and thrown into prison, without any mercy. In Great Yin Dynasty, if an Earth immortal of nascent soul realm violated the law, as long as it was not a rebellion, he could do whatever he wanted, and Yin Dan would not restrain him. However, in Daqin, if an Earth immortal of nascent soul realm killed someone without any reason, he would be arrested and sentenced as a mortal. Therefore, among these prisoners and felons, there were quite a number of Jin Dan cultivators, and over 50 nascent soul cultivators. Apart from these cultivators who were rushing towards the clay city with bright beams, the rest of the Xiantian Daoists and Hotian warriors were swallowing some pills that were given to them before they set off. These pills could stimulate one's potential, burn one's life force and even soul, and allow one's overall strength to have a great boost in a very short period of time. When a Daoist of Xiantian consumed it, he would possess the strength equivalent to a Jin Dan cultivator for 15 minutes. And when a Hotian warrior consumed it, he would possess the strength equivalent to a Taoist of Xiantian for half an hour. On their chest, back, arms, and legs, there were talismans suddenly flashing and blinking. The talismans on their chest and back were the fiendish spells that could restrain one's soul and control one's corpse. After they were killed, as long as their bodies were still intact, they could still rise up and kill someone in a very short period of time. On the other hand, the talismans on their arms and legs were various talismans that could increase their speed, strength, and explosive force, which could greatly enhance the combative strength of these prisoners. On the forehead of all prisoners, there were black talismans blinking and blinking. These talismans were the soul control talismans set up by the government of Daqin. If any of them tried to flee in the face of danger, or were afraid of death, their souls would be wiped out immediately, and their bodies would explode and kill the enemies around them. Even those Jin Dan and nascent soul cultivators had the same talismans blinking and blinking on their forehead. The law of Daqin was very strict, and everyone was treated equally. Even those cultivators with formidable cultivation base had their nascent divinity planted with restrictive spells, preventing them from fleeing when they were serving their sentence. They were several millions of bloodthirsty beasts who were forced into a dead end, and had no choice but to fight with their lives, hoping to escape from the punishment, get promoted and make a fortune. Amidst the battle cries that shook the mountains and tsunamis, the prisoners of Daqin charged down from the eastern mountain ridge, and came before a group of mighty soldiers of Xiang clan, who were having a drill outside the clay city. Howling and howling, these prisoners raised their weapons and leaped towards these elite soldiers of Xiang clan. 100,000 versus 800. This was the overall strength of the soldiers on the flat dam. In almost an instant, the black tide of prisoners had surrounded these elite soldiers of Xiang clan. 800 mighty soldiers of Xiang clan formed into a battle formation, unleashing streams of blood-red energy effortlessly to kill the enemies who came charging at them. Even the weakest soldier among them had the overall strength equivalent to an early-stage Jin Dan cultivator. The streams of blood-red energy unleashed from their weapons stretched for several hundred feet, and with just one strike, they could cut several hundred enemies in half from the waist. However, what happened next shocked these mighty soldiers of Xiang clan. Not a single drop of blood was seen flowing out from the bodies of these Daqin prisoners who were cut in half from the waist. The lower half of their bodies were rushing towards them at top speed, while the upper half of their bodies were using their arms as legs, trying their best to crawl towards them. These mighty soldiers of Xiang clan did not specialize in magic or divine abilities. They only had a strong fleshly body and an enormous amount of energy. Faced with such a bizarre scene, ordinary cultivators could use all kinds of restrictive spells to kill the enemies, but these mighty soldiers of Xiang clan could only passively attack with the weapons in their hands. Suddenly, the bodies of these Daqin prisoners exploded and exploded, like the thorns that were secretly cultivated by the clans of Great Yin Dynasty. Each and every one of their cells exploded, as if they were filled with a highly pressurized gas. Their body fluids had turned into a pitch-black medicinal liquid, emitting a strong smell of herbs and splashing onto the bodies of the mighty soldiers of Xiang clan. Some soldiers did not have the time to circulate their energies to protect themselves, and were splashed by the medicinal liquid. Immediately, countless white blisters emerged on their skin, and in just a blink of an eye, their bodies were corroded and covered with festering wounds. The wounded mighty soldiers of Xiang clan howled and howled miserably. One after another, they exercised the same fiend technique that Xiang Yu and his men were cultivating. The strength of their bodies, defense, and recovery ability were instantly strengthened by several dozens of times. Their skin and flesh were wriggling, quickly healing the corroded wounds on their bodies. The black medicinal liquid and the blood-red light that sprayed out from their bodies were corroding each other, producing jarring, sizzling noises. Large sheets of blood-red light kept rushing out from the bodies of these mighty soldiers, blocking off the black poisonous liquid that kept spraying towards them. As these mighty soldiers of Xiang clan were practicing martial arts, they were not wearing any armors, and that was why they were caught unprepared by the Daqin prisoners. However, once they exercised the fiend technique, The defensive strength of the blood-red light that shrouded them was not weaker than the defensive strength of upper-grade magical items and armors. They formed into a formation, unleashing beams of blood-red light as they charged towards the Clay City. Several tens of thousands of condemned prisoners had surrounded these mighty soldiers of Xiang clan, and were charging towards them desperately. One after another, the bodies of the condemned prisoners exploded, and the powerful impact made the blood-red light surge and surge. The mighty soldiers of Xiang clan were like a pack of mighty lions, struggling with great difficulty in a vast ocean of marching ants. Finally, several dozens of mighty soldiers of Xiang clan who were lagging behind were forcibly dragged out from the formation by these Daqin prisoners, who were howling and howling in a strange manner. Then, they were slashed and chopped into pieces like a raging storm. When the weapons collided with the bodies of these mighty soldiers, the edges of the blades would roll backward, and flames would burst out from the edges, filling the air with sparks. Only a few insignificant wounds were left on the bodies of these mighty soldiers, and they were healing at an incredible speed. However, when several thousands, tens of thousands of blades and swords kept slashing and slashing on their bodies, these mighty soldiers could only howl and howl miserably as they were chopped into meat paste. In the end, only less than 300 of the 800 mighty soldiers of Xiang clan managed to retreat back to the Clay City, while the rest of them were killed in the battle. Behind them, over 30,000 condemned prisoners of Daqin were lying on the ground. Dark blood and red flesh and blood were splattered all over the ground. On the flatland, several million condemned prisoners of Daqin swarmed over, and in just a blink of an eye, the entire flatland was submerged. Over 30,000 mighty soldiers of Xiang clan, who were moving about outside the Clay City, were completely surrounded. Zhang Han hovered in midair, holding the command flag in his hand as he cried out sternly, "Fight to the death! Fight to the death! Kill!" Like some evil ghosts that had gone mad, the condemned prisoners of Daqin began to howl and howl crazily. "Fight to the death! Fight to the death!" You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.